And Matt Harvey have apparently all agreed that he is going to be able to pitch intermittently and into the playoffs as well. Yoenis Cespedes, although cold the last 4 games, so hot before that, helping to lead the Mets to a big lead over the Nationals in the NL East. On the mound for the Yankees as they try to win this series, CC Sabathia coming off a good start in his last one against Tampa Bay. They can pick up a game on the Blue Jays, who lost earlier today. Sunday Night Baseball on ESPN is brought to you by Taco Bell. Welcome to New York City. We've got the Yankees and the Mets, both of them in a playoff position right now. The Mets a little bit more secure, obviously. They lead their division, but all of the talk around the Mets over the last few weeks has been, much of the talk has been about Matt Harvey. Correctly, the Scott Boras starting out by saying can't go over 180 innings. The Mets saying they're blindsided. They skip him. Now he's going to start tonight. Nobody knows how long he's going to go. Exactly what's going on around here?
Well, you know, when we talked to Terry Collins, he made it more sound like it's more of an innings thing than it is a pitch thing.
Yeah.
You know, we heard 70 pitches and that's it. But he said the Yankees are going to dictate how many pitches he throws today, and how many stressful pitches and how many stressful innings he has is going to dictate how many innings he's going to pitch. Look, the New York Mets need him. If they're going to go deep in the postseason, they need a healthy and a very good Matt Harvey. His last 2 starts, he hasn't been that great. I think what they're doing now is pitching him on 5 days rest or 4 days rest till the end of the season, like Terry Collins said they were going to do. I think that's going to be better for him than waiting for a long time and letting him pitch like 10 or 11 days.
For a little bit more on this situation and the Mets in general, let's go down to the field and join Buster Olney.
Dan, when the whole controversy about Matt Harvey's innings broke, third baseman David Wright went to Mets manager Terry Collins and said, I want to talk to Matt. And Collins said, you're the captain. Well, I asked David Wright earlier today what his advice was to Matt Harvey.
You know, he's coming off Tommy John surgery. You know, he has, you know, people that he relies on to give him advice. But at the same time, he's a competitor and he wants to be out there. So, you know, more than anything, just kind of listening. And, you know, if he has, you know, questions for me or, you know, from my end, you know, I want him to feel comfortable asking me those questions and you know, giving me a little advice. But, you know, it's a fine line between, you know, him trusting, obviously, the doctors, obviously his representation, you know, but also, you know, the competitor inside wanting him to go, you know, out there, compete and help us get to the playoffs and hopefully, you know, we do get there and hopefully get deep in the playoffs.
Now, you may see an unusual situation tonight. If Harvey is especially efficient and uses up his innings allotments quickly, what you may see is him go out to the bullpen to do more work, even as the game continues, because the Mets want to make sure that he's extended and stretched out and prepared for the postseason. Dan, back to you.
A very interesting and highly unusual situation. We'll see how it unfolds tonight here at Citi Field. Let's talk about the Yankees. They've got a chance to make up a game, as we mentioned, on Toronto. The Blue Jays lost to Boston earlier today. The Yankees, though, are without Mark Teixeira, out for the season with a fracture in his leg, and they're without Alex Rodriguez because there's no DH in a National League park. So where's the offense going to come from, Jess?
Well, Dan, I mean, you think about it, 50% of this offense has come via the home run. So 2 things have to happen. They need to have their table setters, and Jacoby Ellsbury and Brett Gardner. These guys were so solid early on. They were batting 300 and heading into the All-Star break. They need to get hot again for them to have success now. Secondly, they need the big bats to now step up and replace the missing ones of Teixeira and Arad. Carlos Beltran, who had a 3-run home run last night, has been hot the last 6 weeks, hitting over 300 with 8 home runs. And Brian McCann and Greg Bird, both of them need to be strong in the middle of the lineup.
Interleague baseball, Yankees and the Mets, they've never played this late. They're both hoping to be playing right into October. It's a big crowd here at Citi Field with fans representing both of the New York franchises. The rubber match of a 3-game series between the Yankees and the Mets. Yoenis Cespedes has taken this town by storm in the last 6 weeks. And the dark night. Matt Harvey is on the mound for the first time in 12 days. How well will he pitch? How far will he go? We will find out the answers to those questions and more momentarily here at Citi Field. Sunday Night Baseball on ESPN is presented by Taco Bell's new $1 Daredevil Loaded Grillers. Try all 3 if you dare. And in part by Chevrolet. Find new roads. And Total Wireless. Don't pay for more than you need. Moments ago, Matt Harvey taking the field to a very loud ovation here from what we could tell at Citi Field. As we mentioned, he's been a bit of a polarizing figure with a lot of people saying, hey, it's September. It's a race. You got to pitch. Everybody seeming to fall on the side of the Mets on this one, at least Met fans. And everybody anxiously awaiting in the Mets world to see how Harvey does tonight. And again, we'll talk about the plan. We'll tell you all about what Terry Collins told us before the game. He is expected to make this and 2 more starts before the end of the regular season. And it's kind of a fine line. They want him to pitch enough so that, assuming things go well, he can go deep into a game in October. But they don't want him to pitch too much because they're then running up against whatever the innings limit is. And there still seems to be a little bit of murkiness right now. But at least on the surface, Jess, it appears player, agent, team are all somewhat on the same page.
They are, at least so it seems, and I think the key for Harvey tonight is really going to be, because he's limited, about his command. A guy that normally is very effective with his pitches, but it's more important for him right now, and not just with his fastball, but with his breaking balls, his slider, and his curve.
I don't know if Harvey and the Mets and his Dr. Andrews and Scott Boras are on the same page. They're in the same book, though. Let's just start at that. They're on the same book as far as that goes.
Harvey ready to take the mound. Jacoby Ellsbury will be the leadoff hitter for the Yankees. And whenever the Yankees and the Mets get together, a lot of electricity in the ballpark, and tonight is no exception. The Mets, the leaders in the National League East. The Yankees, the leader in the American League wildcard race. As we are underway with the first pitch strike at 97. Ellsbury's had 3 hits in the last few days, but overall that has not rescued his September. He was playing great before he suffered a knee injury back in the summer. As Joe Girardi told us before the game, he thought Ellsbury was playing at an MVP level before the knee injury, but he has not been able to get back to that level or anywhere close to it since coming back off the DL. Nice night here in New York, 69 degrees, no threat of any bad weather as the Mets and the Yankees wrap up this 3-game series. Up and away, 1 ball and 2 strikes.
Yeah, that was what I wanted to see in Matt Harvey with the innings limit, pitch limit, whatever you want to call it. What's he going to do if he gets 0-2? Will he waste a pitch? Yes, he did. Now he's probably going to throw that slider back down and in on the foot of Ellsbury. He got the swing over. 497 away for strikeout. Pick your poison. Well, this is, this is what you can get, and this is what would make him a great postseason pitcher, is the ability to overpower hitters. And you see Ellsbury right there. He had to be conscious of that slider that he got on the second pitch for strike 2, and Matt Harvey just, they go back away. He and Darno decide, let's go back away at 97, and he got a chase.
So a strikeout for the first batter for Harvey, and now here's Brett Gardner, the left fielder, but number 2 hitter for the Yankees. He'll take the fastball inside for ball 1. Gardner hitting .264, 16 home runs, just 2 for his last 23. When the Yankee offense was at its best was when Ellsbury and Gardner were both getting on a lot. 89-mile-an-hour changeup right there, and it's 1-1 on Gardner. But right now, Ellsbury, Gardner not getting on as much. Teixeira out for the season. A-Rod not in the starting lineup at all in this series. Yet the Yankees have split the first 2. They won 5-0 yesterday. Got home runs from Beltran and McCann.
Well, when you talk about a team that relies so much on the home run, I mean, even with the home run of Beltran yesterday, it was because Ellsbury and Gardner both got on base. And when they have success, they need runners to be there. So when they get the long ball, it's more than just a solo shot.
Back-to-back strikeouts to start the night for Harvey.
I think this is Matt Harvey telling the Mets fans, yes, I will be in the postseason. Yeah, his last couple starts, we mentioned it in the opening, it hasn't been very good, but if he can throw this pitch, a breaking ball, the changeup he threw prior, I mean, the fastball at 97 and that pitch, you know, these are, you know, guys struggling offensively in Ellsbury and Gardner, but he made pretty easy work out of those two.
Now Beltran. Beltran hitting .279, 16 home runs. Well, definitely mixing his pitches. We've seen a number of fastballs, but a couple of changeups. The breaking ball to strike out Gardner. And a ground ball down to first, gobbled up by Lucas Duda, and it's a very good start for Matt Harvey in this game. A couple of strikeouts and a ground ball. The Yankees go in order. CC Sabathia to the mound when we come back. Matt Harvey off to a very good start in this one. 3 up, 3 down went the Yankees, including strikeouts of Jacoby Ellsbury and Brett Gardner. Harvey looking strong. The Yankees will hand the ball to CC Sabathia tonight. Sabathia coming off a good effort against the Rays in his last start. 6 2/3 shutout innings. It has not been an easy season for Sabathia. 4-9 on the season, with an ERA close to 5. Spent some time on the DL recently with an inflammation in his right knee. Has made 2 starts since coming back. And a lot of question, given the way the season has gone, if the Yankees do make it to the postseason, if they are in a division series, where does Sabathia fit in terms of a postseason rotation? Right now, the Yankees are just thinking about winning every game they can, trying to solidify their hold on a playoff spot, and maybe make a run at the AL East crown. If they can win tonight, they'll be just 2.5 back at Toronto when they begin a 3-game series in Toronto tomorrow night. Ruben Tejada is the leadoff hitter for the Mets tonight, and he takes a strike. A lot of options these days for Terry Collins. A lot of depth. Tejada the better fielding of his 2 shortstops. Wilmer Flores with a better bat. But Tejada playing better, a little more consistent in the field, swinging the bat better in the second half of the season. Chases up high, and it's 0-2. After Tejada, David Wright, and then Yoenis Cespedes. The numbers: an even .300 average after the All-Star break for Tejada, .264 overall.
Even better, only 2 errors defensively, which is a big part of why he's in the lineup.
The 0-2 is lashed into left field, and this ball is going to get all the way to the wall. Tejada on his way into second with a leadoff double.
CC Sabathia was at his best. He can throw balls up in the strike zone to try to get hitters to swing through it at 95 to 97. Now at 89 to 91, he has to keep the ball down and make it move. That pitch to Tejada up in the zone with no movement. Good piece of hit by Tejada, and the Mets are in business right now.
So the leadoff man in scoring position, and here's David Wright. Wright, who missed more than 3 months with a back issue, spinal stenosis, has been back for about 3 weeks as the energy gets cranked up here at Citi Field. Wright is the only Met who was with the team the last time they went to the playoffs. That was way back in 2006. And you got to believe that nobody is more excited in that Met clubhouse about a chance to get back to the postseason than this guy right here. Two.
CC Sabathia is trying to do everything he can to keep David Wright from hitting the ball to the right side to get Tejada to third base. David Wright's natural swing is an inside-out swing, so you understand why he's hitting second in this lineup. But CC's pitching him tough right now.
Pokes a base hit into right center. Not only will this get Tejada to third, this will get him home. Wright digging for second, and in there with a slide as the Mets take an early lead.
I think CC should have come back inside in that lower part of the corner just because of what you mentioned, Crucky. The fact that you know that Wright's swing and what he's trying to do here, he gets a fastball in the outside corner, he's able to just simply drive it, and this is his bread and butter. This is what he does so well. You watch how controlled his bat is, how deep he lets that ball travel. He pokes it into the gap to get himself an RBI.
So back-to-back doubles for the Mets here to begin the game. In the bottom of the first, it is 1-0 Mets, and here is Cespedes. Incredible numbers since he joined the Mets on August the 1st, although he is 0 for his last 17. About a week ago, he was so hot, there were some folks who even thought he should be considered for National League MVP, even though he only got to the National League on the 1st of August. But whether you think that's a credible argument or not, it's undeniable that he has been a huge part of the Mets' resurgence here in the last couple of months. Big swing and a miss, 0-2.
He wasn't trying to hit a grounder to second there to get David Wright over. Hey, you know, you take a shot. Now it's 2 strikes, you protect it. You know, CC's already shown it. You know, it doesn't matter if he gets 2 strikes. He hasn't been able to put anyone away.
Cespedes just 1 for 11 in his career against Sabathia. The lead at second by Wright. And the 0-2 outside and a check swing. They'll appeal, but he didn't go. Cespedes had a stretch where he hit 15 home runs rather, in a 24-game span. And in 45 games overall as a Met, he has 30 extra base hits.
So you say the trade worked out for him?
It seems to have, yeah. Swing and a miss here, though, and Sabathia gets him 1 down. As we check out the Mets lineup tonight, presented by Taco Bell, you've already seen the top third. Tejada, Wright, and Cespedes. Juan Uribe's in the lineup at second base tonight to get another right-handed bat in there against Sabathia. Travis d'Arnaud very hot. Lucas Duda with a home run in his career off Sabathia, so he's in the lineup tonight. Michael Kadire is back off the DL, basically platooning right now. Juan Lagares in center field, and then of course Matt Harvey pitching and batting ninth. Here's Uribe, and you can see the numbers don't jump out at you. Hitting .218 as a Met. Came from Atlanta with Kelly Johnson a few days before Cespedes did. But guys, we were in Terry Collins' office, and he was talking about what Uribe and Johnson did to transform the clubhouse when they got here. I mean, two veteran guys, two guys who have played for some very good teams in the past, two guys who really helped change the culture of the clubhouse.
Well, two guys have been through a lot in their careers too, and Kelly Johnson and Juan Uribe.
Anywhere this guy's gone, whoever his manager is and whoever his teammates are, just rave about.
Talking even to some of the younger guys, they said his biggest message is really what they're going through right now. Him preparing them mentally about what's headed around the corner in the postseason, trying to get them to understand this whirlwind, how fast things seem to be moving, that he has that experience that he shared with his teammates from day one since coming over.
You saw won a World Series with the White Sox, won another one with the Giants, also was in the postseason with the Dodgers. It's like Terry Collins has a brand new team compared to, say, June. They bring in Uribe, they bring in Johnson, they bring in Cespedes, Clippard, and Reed in the bullpen. Yeah, Conforto comes up. David Wright gets healthy.
Darno comes
back. It's a whole new team.
Yeah. There's your lineup.
Well, Terry Collins doesn't have to put coins in his back pocket and flip to see who he's going to pinch hit. Yeah, he has a great bench right now, and you don't understand the National League game. A bench is so vital because they are going to be used pretty much every day.
So far, everything to these right-handed batters, guys, away from CC Sabathia.
Well, he's trying to set him up with fastball and then that backdoor slider he's got that kind of curves around the backside of that plate over the strike zone and seems to be switching between the two to these righties.
I'm surprised to Tejada, to David Wright, and now to Uribe. He hasn't tried to bury that slider down and in and try to get him to swing over top of it.
The way he pitched against Tampa Bay last start, a lot of two-seamers away, a lot of change-ups down and away. Tried to come in there, but he missed a spot and it's fouled back.
Guys, the right-handed nature of the Mets lineup is interesting. It's too early to call this a dress rehearsal, but remember, if they face the Dodgers in the division series, and that's the way it looks like it's going to happen, they would face left-hander Clayton Kershaw, Brett Anderson, Alex Wood.
2-2 the count as Uribe waits. A run in, a runner at second, one out. Sabathia will step off again as he and Brian McCann are having a little bit of trouble getting on the same page.
Well, two young kids, you can understand why they're not on the same page.
Popped up right side. Will it get out of play? Yes, it will.
And, you know, going back to what Buster said, you know, even though they're facing lefties, you look at what the St. Louis Cardinals have done in the postseason against Clayton Kershaw, and you know, the reason why they do it is because they throw their lefties out there. You let Kershaw get established against all right-handed hitting lineup, and he can go down and away, up and in, the breaking ball. You got to throw some lefties in there to give him a different look every once in a while. You can't tell me that Daniel Murphy ain't going to be playing in the postseason against Kershaw.
Uribe battling Sabathia. The Mets trying to open up a larger lead here in the very first inning. And he chases a ball 6 inches outside for out number 2.
Well, they're going to another meeting. I don't know if they think David Wright might have the signs, but if he had the signs, Uribe wouldn't have swung at that one. You wouldn't think. He's asking if that pitch was up to McCann, and you know, when your outfielders are chasing it, there's a pretty good chance it was.
So 2 down now, and here's Mets catcher Travis d'Arnaud, a hot hitter, hitting .340 in the month of September. Guy who's missed some time, been on the DL twice this year, had a broken finger and had a left elbow injury as well.
If CeCe can get out of this inning after giving up back-to-back doubles to start the game and get out with only 1 run, you got to think he's feeling pretty good about himself getting out of this one. And if he gives up a 2-out hit, it's a backbreaker. I mean, it's just devastating.
Changeup down and away, a ball and a strike.
Well, and here's, welcome to New York. Yeah. There's the shift on with the pigeon.
Yeah. Yankees going 5 in, pretty early for 5 infielders,
yeah,
isn't it? Yeah.
Trying to keep this run from scoring. Harvey's got good stuff tonight. Going over to talk to Greg Bird.
Figures he would go near a guy named Bird, right?
Yeah.
So,
oh boy.
We're related.
Up high, 2 balls and a strike.
Looks like he's taking a big lead and going back to first after that pitch. Come on, you can make it. Get back. I think he wants to go say hi to Tom Goodwin, first base coach of the Mets. Little itch. Take care of that.
The 2-1. Upstairs, ball 3. Sabathia, the pitch count up over 20, kind of fighting his command a little bit. 3 or 4 meetings or talks with Brian McCann.
Yeah, you wonder if he's fighting his command or trying not to give d'Arnaud a pitch to hit with the lefty Lucas Duda coming up next. This pitch will tell you if he throws a breaking ball or change up, he wants d'Arnaud to get himself out.
Missed outside with a fastball for ball 4. So here's Duda. Duda hit a home run off Sabathia back in April. Sabathia and Harvey matched up in a game on April the 25th. Harvey and the Mets won 8-2. Sabathia gave up 3 home runs in that game. Kevin Plawecki, Eric Campbell, and Lucas Duda. Harvey had a very good top of the first, 3 up, 3 down, a couple of strikeouts. Duda back in the first half of the season was at times really the only power threat that the Mets had. They've got a much deeper lineup now. And Duda, who was on the DL with a back problem, missed about 3 weeks, returned about 10 days ago, has not been swinging the bat since like he was earlier in the season. The difference now is Terry Collins has a lot more options than he had.
Yeah, early in the season it was Duda or Wilmer Flores, whichever one, would drive in a few runs. They had a chance to win. And
Duda did hit a home run on Friday, though, in the opening game of this series off Masahiro Tanaka. One of 2 solo home runs Tanaka gave up in the game. He pitched pretty well, but the Mets won the game. News on Tanaka, by the way, today. The Yankees announced before the game he will not make his scheduled start Wednesday in Toronto. He suffered a grade 1 right hamstring strain Friday night and will not make the start. Ivan Nova is going to go back into the rotation and start the 3rd and final game of the series up in Toronto.
From what I understand, Dan, he fought that too. He wanted to make that start in Toronto, but they said, nope, we're going to hold you back. This was a wild card game. I think it would start. It's not.
So they're going to skip him and hope he's okay for the next time around. So it'll be Warren, Severino, and Nova starting the 3 games in Toronto. 3-0 pitch in for a strike to Duda.
When he heard it trying to bunt, he said too, which is one of the downsides of interleague play and something that wouldn't have happened. They weren't playing a National League team, so him trying to bunt and pulling a hammy.
Pitchers. Really?
26 pitches and counting for Sabathia. 3-1. At the knees, full count.
And that's where he needs to live. If he can just hit that bottom of the zone with his fastball, it's going to be a tough night for Mets hitters. It's when he elevates that pitch that it's getting hit.
Runners will be on the move. Right from second, Darno from first. Fouled back. Well, Joe Girardi hates when a pitcher gets a pitch count up early because he doesn't have that many arms that he really feels he can rely upon. It seems down to that bullpen. A lot of work for Wilson and Betances and Miller, but Sabathia with a very high pitch count here in the first inning.
He's got enough of them down there, that's for sure.
Yeah, 14 of them just
Wow.
walked out to the bullpen before this half inning. There's ball 4 just outside, and the bases are loaded. Oh, he just got the tail end there. Joe Girardi over near the phone in the dugout. Did he make a call down to the bullpen already to get somebody up?
Either that or he called his replay guy to ask if that was a strike or not. Can you do that? I
don't think
suppose
you can do that, Crocky.
Oh, why not?
Yankees hoping to take advantage of the Blue Jay loss earlier today. They'll be either 3.5 back or 2.5 back, depending on the outcome of this one. A strike to Michael Kadire. Kadire, a regular early in the season, didn't hit a ton for the Mets, was on the DL, spent about a month on the DL, came back in the middle of August, and not playing a whole lot here in September. Just about all of his at-bats coming against lefties. Relegated to a platoon role right now, if that. And a 92-mile-an-hour fastball from Sabathia gets by him, and it's 0-2.
If I was a righty right now, I'd probably crowd a little bit more than these hitters are. About 80% of the pitches Sabathia has thrown to these righties have been on that outer half to away.
That's why I'm surprised he hasn't yet to throw that slider to the righty's back foot. At some point, you got to go down there and show it to him.
Fastball in, and it's popped up. Bird with room, and the inning is over. A lot of work, a lot of pitches, but only one run allowed. Matt Harvey back to the mound for the Mets when we come back.
My client was talking to his doctors, and I also wanted to make sure the team was aware of what the message from the doctor was.
I hired Scott for a reason, and that's to prolong my career and put me in the best possible position.
I can't sit here and say that he's going to be available through the entire playoffs. When we get there, we'll figure it out.
It's all about playing. It's not about all the talk, all the rhetoric, or anything else on the outside. We got to forget anything else except what we can control.
So that was a big situation, to say the least, involving the Mets. It all started, at least for public consumption, with Matt Harvey's agent Scott Boras saying that according to Dr. James Andrews, according to the medical professionals who take care of Harvey, that a hard limit of 180 innings total, including playoffs, was what was recommended. The Mets say they were blindsided, that they had no idea about that. Sandy Alderson said later he thought it was more like 185 plus playoffs. Matt Harvey didn't really know what to say the day that this all broke. He had kind of an uncomfortable looking press conference the next day. And guys, you saw the papers and you were on social media. Well, at least Jess was. Crucky's not on social media, but it was a firestorm.
It was.
And you know, 99% of it, guys, seemed to come down against Scott Boras and Matt Harvey, saying, come on, it's September, they're in a race, you got to pitch. And again, it appears like everybody's now on the same page to a certain extent. They've got a plan, and that Harvey will make this start and two more. They will limit his innings to a certain extent, and everybody seems to agree that, assuming the Mets are in the playoffs, that Matt Harvey will be able to pitch in October. But I don't know about you guys, the first thing I wonder about is, how did this conversation not happen or become public in February or March? Why was it late August, early September when this was happening?
Yeah, I mean, they had all last year and all, you know, off season and into spring training. This could have been, everyone could have sat down and got on the same page. It just didn't.
Long throw with Harvey covering, and they will get the out. Talk about a guy getting robbed, hitting one into the shift.
Hey, you can't even say that was shallow right field where Uribe got that one. That was pretty deep, but you know, third baseman's arm, he still got a lot of it. A good stretch by Harvey.
Harvey's hustling to get this. I like the way he slows down his back foot to make sure, because all his momentum's taking him away from first base. You watch him try to stretch to kind of drag his foot to make sure it sticks to get the out.
So 4-1 on the put out. Terrific play by Uribe. One down here in the Yankees second. And the batter is Greg Bird, the Yankee first baseman, in place of the injured Mark Teixeira. You know, another thing, guys, that worked against Harvey, and by extension Boras, I guess, in this situation, is that, remember back in the middle of the year, the Mets talked about going to a six-man rotation to preserve the innings a little bit for all of their young starters. And Harvey publicly bristled at that suggestion. He didn't want to do that, but then something obviously changed between then and when Boras came out with his statement.
And I think that's where there's a disconnect. It's not just, you know, Harvey and his camp and the Mets. It's Harvey with the doctor, with everybody, just not everyone on the same page at all, because at that point he easily would have understood, hey, look, there's going to be a limit at some point. So yes, let's go to a six-man. I'd like to preserve now so you can have me later, but obviously his mind wasn't even there then.
Bird goes around, says John Hirschbeck down at third. Hirschbeck's hearing it now from the Yankee dugout as Bird strikes out. And whoever's doing the talking, he's telling them to stop talking, and it's Joe Girardi.
Joe's going down the end of the bench. He might not be long for this one.
Hirschbeck heard something he didn't like, to say the least, and Girardi didn't like what Hirschbeck said to him, but Girardi stays.
The pitch is a really good pitch by Matt Harvey to get the check swing. But yeah, that was a quick. I've never seen an argument that quick, that vehement, that short, and got it over with and get back in the dugout.
2-0 the count on Chase Headley, the Yankee third baseman. Tension running high on both sides. Pennant race baseball, hunt for October. Down and in, ball 3. And the Yankees have their first base runner. So a runner at first, 2 down. Dustin Ackley is the batter for the Yankees. Takes a breaking ball in for a strike. Ackley picked up from Seattle. Much different looking Dustin Ackley than when he was with the Mariners. The Yankees have that no facial hair below. I think it's below the bottom lip. So he had to clean it up to become a Yankee, and a guy who gives him a little bit of versatility. Can play second, first, play some of the outfield as well. Two and 1. Harvey got the Yankees in order in the first, struck out a couple. Got a ground out from the first batter here. Terrific play by Juan Uribe. Then he struck out Greg Bird, walked Chase Headley. There's no definitive number of innings that Harvey will go tonight. Swing and a miss, 2-2. Terry Collins says the Yankees will determine that, meaning how effective Harvey is will determine that. And it is an innings count, not a pitch count, we are told from the Mets. That is the issue, and it sounds like that's because that's the way it's come down from wherever it's come down from, that Harvey is to stick to a certain number of innings.
The only thing that bothers me is when you hear a guy say, you know, I hired these guys to protect me, and so I'll have a long career. You have guys like David Wright who's playing hurt. Daniel Murphy's playing hurt. You know, this is about getting to the postseason and try to win a world championship. And when a guy's looking at the long term, it can be a little dicey as a teammate.
Inning is over. The Dark Knight's off to a good start here in Queens. What do you say, Crucky? You in?
Yep.
1-0 Mets, bottom of the second.
Wasn't really a question.
No, it really wasn't. Yeah, I knew the answer to that question before I asked it. Bottom of the second here at Citi Field. Matt Harvey with 2 very good innings. He's walked a batter, struck out 3. The Mets lead the Yankees 1-0. Let's bring in now physical therapist, ESPN injury analyst, Stefania Bell. Stefania, it's been a huge topic of conversation in New York. How many innings is too many innings? What is the concern medically for Matt Harvey if he is to exceed a certain number of innings?
Well, I think the concern for any pitcher coming back from Tommy John surgery is the risk of re-injury. This was once thought to be a fail-safe solution after you tore your ulnar collateral ligament. We now know that's not true. If you look in recent years, with the increase of Tommy John surgeries, there's been a large percentage of revision procedures or second surgeries. And amongst those, most alarming, 1/3 of them have been within 3 years of the original procedure. So it's a legitimate concern.
And I think everyone would agree it's a legitimate concern. Is there, though, evidence that 10 more innings, 20 more innings, that kind of thing? Is there science behind it, or is it still speculation in terms of how many innings puts you into a danger zone?
No, there's absolutely no evidence. I mean, if it's scientific, evidence-based data you're looking for, we don't have it. Innings really aren't a consistent measure. It goes to how do you define an inning? Is it number of pitches? That can range from a handful to double digits. Is it situational? A guy could be cruising with an easy lead or in a tight spot, bases loaded, 2 outs, cleanup hitter at the plate. That might be more stressful. And what about the types of pitches thrown? Somebody who's throwing fastballs primarily, or somebody who's leaning heavily on breaking pitches. And what's the role of fatigue? And how do we even measure fatigue? Right now, we don't know. I think innings have been a performance benchmark in baseball for so long that it's carried over here. But in medicine, we need to do a better job of actually determining what factors contribute to injury and how to measure them.
In terms of this specific injury, whether it's being at a risk the first time or the second time around, are you expecting more progress to be made where it could be more scientifically determined in advance whether a guy is susceptible to this kind of an injury?
That's the goal. Major League Baseball is actually putting research dollars towards that right now. And it's well known in the medical community that this needs to be a global effort because everyone's trying to find the right answer, but it just doesn't exist. And it takes time. I think that's what's tough to appreciate. You have to have years of data and you have to have controlled scientific studies to be able to draw significant conclusions. Right now, conclusions are just being drawn based on hype, and that's not science.
All right, from elbows to hamstrings, from Mets to Yankees, Masahiro Tanaka has been scratched from his start Wednesday with a grade 1 hamstring strain as Harvey strikes out 2 down. Tell us what a grade 1 strain means and typically how long that keeps somebody out of the lineup.
The good news is grade 1 is the most minor variety. I mean, it really could be a 1 to 2 week injury. And the other good news for Tanaka is it's his push leg, not his landing leg, where your hamstring really has to work to decelerate your motion. And let's face it, at the start of the season, all the talk about Tanaka was his elbow, and he's exceeded everyone's expectations. So you certainly don't want to put his arm at risk by putting him out there with a hamstring that's weak or uncomfortable, and then that puts that throwing arm at greater risk. So better to have him skip a start, allow the recovery, and not expose him to an additional injury. Not so much to the hamstring, but to that throwing arm.
Stefania, thanks. Stefania Bell, ESPN injury analyst. So again, if you're just joining us, Masahiro Tanaka scratched from his start Wednesday at Toronto. Ivan Nova will make the start in his place. The Yankees hoping it's just a 1-start absence for Tanaka. 1-0 Mets, bottom of the second, 2 outs, nobody on. And back to the top of the order for Ruben Tejada.
I think also, going back to what she was talking about with Harvey and science and coming back from the Tommy John, I think just knowing that every body is different. And I think as any athlete knows your recovery time, whether it's a grade 1 hamstring strain or coming back from Tommy John surgery, everyone is different. So there isn't a set, 180 innings for any player.
There's that pitch you were looking for earlier, Crucky, that a fastball or a hard cutter, it looked like inside on the hands of a righty.
And had some good movement in on the hands of Ruben Tejada. And this is where CC has to pitch. If he wants to get the outside corner opened up, he has to throw that slider, cutter, whatever that is, on the inner half to these righties.
Knocked down by Sabathia, and he will make the play to end the inning. So the Mets go in order. And we're at the end of a couple of eventful innings here at Citi Field. The Yankees and the Mets in a big game for both. The Mets with a 1-0 lead. Field, Sunday Night Baseball on ESPN. Dan Schulman, Jessica Mendoza, John Kruk, Buster Olney. The Mets lead the Yankees 1-0 as Didi Gregorius, the Yankee shortstop, leads it off against Matt Harvey. Been a terrific player in the second half. Has settled into New York. Has maybe stopped trying to do too much. Has gotten more accustomed to his surroundings. And has started to play both offensively and defensively the way the Yankees hoped they would when they acquired him. One thing Joe Girardi said to him at some point is, hey, even if you make a mistake, even if you do something wrong, you're the guy. You're playing tomorrow. Just relax a little bit. And you can understand why a young player, and he's still pretty young, why a young player moving to New York, you don't want to say replacing Derek Jeter, but taking over the position that Derek Jeter played for 20 years. You can understand why a young player might put a little pressure on himself doing that. But he's been a different guy in the second half of the season.
Coming to the Yankees, started his career, of course, with Arizona. Nice weather on the West Coast. You come to New York or anywhere on the East Coast in April and even into May, it's not the greatest conditions to play in.
Easy play out in center for Juan Lagares. Let's check out. We've had so much going on here tonight. Let's check out the starting lineup for the Yankees as we move to the number 9 spot in the order with CC Sabathia. Brought to you by Taco Bell. Ellsbury, Gardner, Bird striking out against Matt Harvey. The only man to reach base, Chase Headley, who walked with 2 outs in the second inning. Again, no Mark Teixeira, out for the season with a fractured leg. No Alex Rodriguez because no DH in the National League Park. And A-Rod, the Yankees, saying he just isn't comfortable playing out in the field. They tried him a little bit, really a little bit, earlier in the season at first base. That didn't go as well as they had hoped, so he's been relegated to pinch hitting duties in this series. It's 32 home runs out of their lineup. Meanwhile, Sabathia fouls one back, especially a little bit earlier in his career. I mean, this guy can hit. He's a big man, and when he gets a hold of one, it can go a long way. He's a lifetime .225 hitter.
Yeah, he could swing it. When he got traded over to Milwaukee, he was a threat.
Can't catch up to that. 2 down.
Well, the arsenal of Matt Harvey is spectacular, and he's showcased it already in these first 3 innings of this ball game. There you see the fastball running away from Jacoby Ellsbury, the fastball up and away to Carlos Beltran, and that slider right there is devastating if he can establish the fastball, and then the changeup by Harvey, and then the curveball to Gardner to get 2 consecutive swings and misses. And you know that is the whole arsenal of Matt Harvey. Top that with 97, you got something special.
Off to a great start tonight. Back to the top of the order. Ellsbury off the glove of Harvey. Out to Uribe at second, and he can't come up with it. And Ellsbury is safely across.
This is a ball that Harvey just kind of reacts. It's an easy ground ball hit up the middle, but he reacts and kind of flinches, and then as soon as it gets to the glove, Uribe knows that he's got to get rid of it. You see him get the ball right here and try to rush it. Can't get it out of his glove.
Harvey's in good fielding position.
It's just that flinch
compared to most, but I think he thought the ball was hit harder than it was.
All right, don't look at the scoreboard. Would you score that E1, E4, or a base hit?
Base hit.
I'd give it an E1, but they never seem to give pitchers.
E1 is your winner.
Really?
E1 is your winner. So Ellsbury, who's got good speed, is aboard. 2 outs here by the Yankee third, and the batter is Brett Gardner. Tough pick there by Darno.
And you wonder here with 2 outs, will Ellsbury be on the run?
There he goes. Pitch in for a strike, throw down, not in time.
Harvey was 1-3-8 going to home plate. Didn't really give d'Arnaud a chance to throw Ellsbury out. Look at the jump, though. Great jump by Jacoby Ellsbury. d'Arnaud did everything he could. Great throw, great tag. Just late because of the great jump and how slow Matt Harvey was to home plate. This is the way the Yankees have to try to attack this one tonight. Get your speed guys on, let them run, and hopefully a single can score a run.
Breaking ball grounded to right side. Stopped by Uribe. And that will force Ellsbury to stop at third base. A run-saving play by Juan Uribe out in shallow right field. And maybe a little bit shaken up for his trouble.
He had to cover a lot of ground to get to that spot. This is similar to the play earlier, except he had to reach even further, and you see him kind of dive down to stop this ball, save the run.
Yeah, I think he face planted. Watch his head. Yep.
You know, he's a third baseman by trade. This is just his 6th start at second base. He's not used to having to range that far. Made a very good play, and Ellsbury was thinking home all the way before Joe Espada put the brakes on at third.
See right there, it looked like he
sternum.
But he saved a run. He's going to stay in. I mean, great play though to keep that ball in front of him. But you know, now you have another situation here with the speed of Gardner.
Ellsbury at third, Gardner at first, and a dangerous hitter in Carlos Beltran.
And Beltran's a pretty much a pull hitter with that hole open, with Duda having to hold on Gardner. Uribe is sneaking over there towards second base, or closer toward first base, but still a hole. Now these are the stressful pitches that could limit his innings.
Home run that Beltran hit yesterday against Syndergaard. 100-mile-per-hour fastball inside. That's an area that he can really get his barrel to. I imagine the Mets staying away, and if they come in at all, it's probably going to be a breaking ball.
A fastball that looked outside, with a strike on the corner for Harvey. It's 1-1. There for a strike, 1-2.
Usually Beltran's turning it loose on the fastball. He's let 2 go. One borderline, that one a pretty good pitch to hit.
Fouled back. An air charge to Harvey, then an infield hit for Gardner. Runners on the corners, 2 down. Yankees trying to get on the board. Harvey trying to hold him at bay. Upstairs.
Surprised Gardner hasn't even thought about stealing yet. Just you get put in motion, you make the infielders move around a little bit.
You know, he may not be the player that he was, and what he was at one point was one of the very best players in the game. But when Beltran's healthy and feeling good, he's still an awfully tough out.
He's a real tough out. He just, you know, has the ability to put the ball in play. Power from both sides of the plate.
Fouls off another one.
And that's a nice ability. 2 strikes for him right there to even just slow the bat down. I mean, he gets 95 away right before that. He's able to kind of throw his hands at that and waste it. And then this one comes in 85, 10 miles an hour less on the inside part of the plate, and he wastes it again.
And these are the pitches that you know, Terry Collins doesn't want to see. All these high leverage pitches, more max effort than earlier in the inning.
2-2 again. Fouled off again, and there will be a 9th pitch in this at bat to Beltran.
Yeah, Gardner finally took off. Surprised. I was wondering when he was going to try to go and make the infield move. But yeah, this is, to me, it's when you watch Gardner start to take off. Ruben Tejada's playing directly behind second, didn't even move. So I don't know if they're just going to give Gardner the base. They keep the infield set so Beltran hits a grounder, they can record an out. But
not going, and fouled off again by Beltran.
You know, at this point, obviously you want the runs, but this at bat right here, just wasting these pitches of Matt Harvey. And this is a successful at bat already.
Yeah, if they had him looking at maybe 5 innings, now it might be just be 4 because of these high leverage pitches that he's Beltran's making him throw.
Runner goes. Pitch hit high in the air to right field. Room for Michael Kadire, and the inning is over. The Yankees leave a pair. 1-0 Mets going to the bottom of the 3rd. Back at Citi Field, we go to the bottom of the third inning. The Mets lead the Yankees 1-0. Matt Harvey on the mound for the Mets. CC Sabathia for the Yankees. The run coming back in the bottom of the first. A leadoff double by Ruben Tejada, and he came in to score on a double by David Wright, who is at the plate right now. The Mets eventually left the bases loaded that inning, and then were retired in order by Sabathia in the second. It'll be Wright, Cespedes, and Uribe. 2, 3, 4 in Terry Collins' lineup tonight. Limited numbers, of course, for David Wright because of the spinal stenosis that cost him 3.5 months this year. Hit a home run in his first at bat back August the 24th against the Phillies. And now Sabathia has fallen to behind 3-0.
I think the hardest adjustment David Wright has had to make, talking to him yesterday, was the fact that he went from 120 to 150 swings pregame in the batting cage to down to 20 to 30, and that is huge, especially if you're a guy that relies a lot on that BP, that feel for pitching and getting your front toss and doing all that routine you've done for over a decade, and now all of a sudden you're limited to just 20 pitches.
Taking all the way, 3-1.
I could live with that.
I couldn't, and I think a good conversation he had with Don Mattingly earlier in the season when they played the Dodgers, someone who also went through back issues, was you got to be able to talk through it instead of work through it. So when you're struggling, and David Wright's gone through a little bit of that lately, he was saying, I got to sit down and just talk about it instead of what I'm used to, picking up my bat and feeling my way through. And that's a lot of hitters rely on that. And for David Wright, just having to change not only the mindset, but also your physical routine that you've done for so long.
Sabathia battling back to a full count.
But I thought it was interesting that him and Don Mattingly had that conversation. Talk about a New York great. The fact that also these two teams can match up as it stands right now.
Sure looks like it.
But that he would help him, let him know, just talk to him.
Mets and Dodgers seem to be on a collision course in a division series unless something significant changes. Three-2 in the air, left center, not deep. One down. Now Cespedes, who, as everybody knows, was the hottest hitter in baseball until just a few days ago. And maybe there's a connection and maybe there's not. But on Tuesday against the Marlins, hit in the left hip by a pitch from Tom Kohler. And he's now 0 for 17 since, including a strikeout in the first inning tonight. So he had made it out in his at-bats prior to getting hit. 0 for 18 overall, 0 for 17 since getting hit by that pitch. After a stretch that saw him hit 15 home runs in 24 games. He will be a free agent at the end of the season. He will be a wealthy man shortly after that. As he lunges for one and lifts a lazy fly ball into right field for Beltran. 2 down. The drought continues for Cespedes. 2 down now as Juan Uribe comes to the plate. Stayed in the game after suffering some sort of discomfort or an injury on that diving play out on the field.
Saved a run. I think Juan Uribe can live with that.
Check swing, and he takes it in for a called strike.
Seemed kind of cringe there too, and I think even more than just the sternum, sometimes knocking the wind out of you, just getting that whole entire part of you even slightly injured doesn't go away.
Fights it off foul. The count 0-2.
He's going to be given high fives for the next 2 innings.
That's Rob Thompson with a lineup card in his hand. He is the bench coach for the New York Yankees. So it appears maybe that Joe Girardi was tossed. He and John Hirschbeck had a conversation between innings, but maybe Hirschbeck tossed him before Girardi came out and talked to him. He didn't toss him while they were out there nose to nose, face to face, but it appears he may have been tossed before he got out there if the bench coach has the lineup card in his hand. This is between innings, but this evidently is after he was tossed, and it'll be a short night for Girardi. Remember, they had the argument on the check swing call a half inning earlier.
Can you argue a check swing?
And yes, indeed, there it is. Joe Girardi was heading down the stairs, so John Hirschbeck did toss him out between innings.
That's amazing.
Uribe pops it up down the third baseline. Who wants it? Nobody can get it. Good effort by Gregorius, but the tarp getting in the way. Hirschbeck and Girardi were jawing at each other an inning before, and then got into it again between innings, and that's the end of the night for Joe Girardi. And a great ground ball to the right side. Ackley on to first to end the inning. 7 in a row set down now by Sabathia. We're at the end of 3 with the Mets leading 1-0. Back at Citi Field, Sunday Night Baseball on ESPN as we go to the top of the fourth inning between the Mets and the Yankees, with the Mets leading 1-0 on a David Wright RBI double back in the first. Matt Harvey is on the mound for the Mets, and again, everybody knows this, but for those who weren't with us earlier, he is under some sort of an innings restriction, although there's no definitive number in tonight's game that he is allowed to go. And Terry Collins did tell us it is an innings restriction, not a pitch restriction, but they seem to have a certain number in their head that they're going to use in total over the next 3 starts, tonight and 2 more in the regular season. They don't want to pitch him too much and put him at any kind of increased risk. They also don't want to pitch him too little because they want him to be stretched out enough to be a contributor in the playoffs. And as Buster talked about a little bit earlier, for those who didn't hear, there is the possibility that he actually could come out of the game and then go down to the bullpen and throw a little more, as he strikes out McCann for his 5th strikeout of the night. But that would seem to be, Buster, as you said earlier, if he was very efficient tonight, if he got through 5 or 6 innings in a low number of pitches, maybe they would send him down to the pen to throw a little bit more. It hasn't been that efficient so far for Matt Harvey.
No, that's exactly right, and that seems to be the case, that they just want to make sure that his pitch count is to the point where he's going to be comfortable in October if he winds up throwing 5, 6, 7 innings in a high stress game.
And at the end of it all, after a couple of days of back and forth, and he said, Matt Harvey, who in some ways was caught in the middle, in some ways some people would say not, but Matt Harvey said, I want to pitch in October. As Greg Bird lifts a fly ball to center, it is deep, but it is playable for Lagares. 2 down. And ask any Mets fans, and I think we all have friends who are Mets fans, all they want to know is that their guy or their guys are going to be on the field if they make it to October. It's been 9 years since this team was in October. Live K-Zone All Game is brought to you by Booking.com. Mets fans are, they remember 2007, they remember 2008. They know the Nationals won today. It's still 6.5, 14 games to go for the Mets, including tonight, but they're not feeling secure yet. That's that's part of the deal when you're a Mets fan.
Yeah, and when you look at, Jacob deGrom hasn't been pitching well. Matt Harvey's last 2 starts have, come 12 days apart or whatever, hasn't pitched well. I mean, if you're the Nationals, you got to think, okay, we still have a chance here.
Well, they finished the regular season with 3 games against one another. So the Nationals' goal is get it to 3 or less by October the 2nd.
Any Mets fan, too, talks about 2007, 2008, and 2 years they felt like they were for sure going to be in the postseason and crumbled late.
They were up 7 with 17 to go back in 2007. Up 6.5 with 14 to go. 13 for the Nationals now here in 2015. But it's been a great run over the last couple of months. A transformed team since the trading deadline. From the worst offensive team in the National League before to the best offensive team in the National League since. Uribe, Cespedes, Johnson, injured players coming back healthy. Look at the movement on that pitch. Strikeout number 6 for Matt Harvey. Hasn't pitched in 12 days. He has looked very sharp in this one. 4 shutout innings, just 1 hit allowed, and the Mets still lead 1-0. Early in the bottom of the first, Ruben Tejada leads off with a double, comes in on an RBI double by David Wright. Joe Girardi didn't last long. A couple of arguments with John Hirschbeck, tossed in the second one, and Matt Harvey in his first appearance on the mound in 12 days, 4 shutout innings and 6 strikeouts. By far the big topic of conversation amongst Mets fans heading into this game here tonight. CC Sabathia is pitching pretty well ever since the first inning. After the back-to-back doubles to begin his night, he hasn't allowed a hit since. He's now retired 7 in a row. Has not picked up a win since July. Just 4-9 on the season. An ERA of 4.93 coming in. Obviously doesn't have the velocity that he used to have. Battling a chronically bad knee as well as Darno grounds out. Well, on the MLB calendar, it is busy and it is going to be fun. You'll see the Yankees and the first place Blue Jays Tuesday and Wednesday from Toronto here on ESPN. Late game Wednesday night as the Dodgers move closer to an NL West title. They will host the Arizona Diamondbacks. How about this big series? The Rangers and the Astros. Friday night at 8 Eastern on ESPN2. And then 1 week from tonight we'll be at Wrigley Field in Chicago as the Cubs play the Pirates in what could very well be, of course, a preview of the National League wild card game.
Unless the Cubs don't lose again, they might win that division.
Well, the Cardinals got them today. Beat them 4-3. That was a pretty heated series at times.
Yeah, it got a little crazy. Hit batters and stuff. And, Mike Matheny brought Rosenthal in the 8th inning with 2 outs to get out of that inning and secured the save in the 9th. It's getting to be postseason time already for those 3 teams.
And American League West is pretty interesting, too. Texas lost today 9-2 to Seattle. Houston beat Oakland 5-1. So Houston's back within a game and a half of the Rangers in the American League West. The Angels lost to Minnesota. They won the first 3 of that series, but lost to the Twins today. Angels can ill afford to lose just about any games right now. Houston is in the 2nd wild card spot. The Yankees are in the 1st wild card spot. As Duda lifts a fly ball to left field, shy of the track, Gardner, 2 down.
Houston right now is in their comfort zone.
Home
string of home games.
Yeah. The Angels are there to start a series tomorrow night, and you can see what that means to the Angels. So the Yankees 3 back of Toronto, 3.5 up on Houston. Houston in the 2nd wild card spot, and the Angels and the Twins and maybe even the Indians, if they can get hot at the end of the season. They beat the White Sox today 6-3. I get the feeling the Indians, they may not make it, Crucky, but it may be just because they run out of time. They've been pretty good over the last month or so.
Yeah, they've been really good, and their defense, infield defense, got a lot better. That helps tremendously. Helps your pitching staff tremendously. Manager's a little shaky, but I mean,
How about Francisco Lindor? I mean, he is just fun.
What a talent
to watch.
Yeah.
And to your point, his defense, but bringing the offense as well. So many of these young guys just coming up, no fear, stepping right into a chase.
0-2 the count on Michael Kadire. Down the right field line, that's a fair ball. Beltran corrals it in the corner, but gliding into second with a 2-out double is Kadire.
This is just good piece of hitting by Kadire, being able to protect in the count. You see where the location, watch this, low and away, still moving away from his bat. And watch what he does. He just goes down with it. He kind of just lowers his barrel to the ball. He gets his back knee just to kind of follow this pitch. He doesn't fully release it. This is the only way to make contact with the pitch. It's the ball moving still away. And just pokers this shot right into right field.
And now with the number 8 hitter up, Juan Lagares, they are going to intentionally walk him. Put him at first base and pitch to Matt Harvey.
No one in the bullpen. I think this is an indication that Matt Harvey's going to go 5. How's his summer been? He was funny in the thing. He said, you know, you think we're in a pennant race and this should be all fun and everything. He said, there's a lot of stress going on. Yep. And you think about all the things that have happened to this team, not only the Matt Harvey, the Wilmer Flores trade, non-trade thing, and he's had to put out some fires this year.
You know, I think one thing that would surprise people is how funny Terry Collins is. I don't think people know how funny he is. You go in his office for 20 minutes, he's funny. And he loves to talk baseball. This man is a lifer. He managed you in winter ball, right?
Yeah. Yeah, we had a interesting time together.
Talk about funny stories.
2 on, 2 out for Harvey.
Although stories of you playing the outfield are funny to me. Climbing walls.
I wonder what that was about.
If you let him hit, you wouldn't think that he's on his last legs on the mound. Otherwise, you just would have pinch hit for him.
Yeah, you would think.
And nobody's up. They're mulling over something.
Seems to be serious.
Yep. Sabathia strikes him out for the second time tonight. Couple of men left on. We're at the end of 4. 1-0 Mets. Back at Citi Field, the Mets lead the Yankees 1-0 as we go to the top of the 5th. Between innings, our Buster Olney with the Mets manager Terry Collins.
Terry, Matt Harvey, 3rd appearance since August 28th. What have you seen in him?
Well, Buster, you know, he's an ace. You know, he's a big horse. He's a big, strong guy, and he's going to go out as he's going by us right now. But he loves to pitch. You know, everybody feels it's a tough situation for him to be in. But, you know, just like tonight, he's making pitches. He's getting, you know, he's making pitches he's got to make. And unfortunately, he's, you know, not going to got much more time in the game.
64 pitches. How much longer?
One more. That's it.
Terry, thanks. Dan, back to you.
All right, a little breaking news. Thank you, Terry Collins, telling us that Matt Harvey will be out after this inning. I wonder if Matt Harvey knows that Matt Harvey will be out after this inning. Dustin Ackley leading off for the Yankees. 7, 8, 9 coming up here in the 5th inning. Daniel Murphy's into the game at second base, so whatever the issue was with Juan Uribe, he gutted it out for another inning and an at-bat, but he is now out of the game. Murphy takes over.
And Dan, the reason why he came out, that the Mets medical folks are checking on Juan Uribe's right collarbone.
Well, one advantage for the Mets, you never like to see anybody hurt, but what advantage is they do have so much depth right now. They had a lineup in there tonight geared up for the lefty and CC Sabathia, but that means that the likes of Daniel Murphy, Kelly Johnson, Michael Conforto, and Curtis Granderson all on the bench. And normally against a righty, most of those guys would be in the lineup, and then you'd have three. You might have a Kadire, a Uribe, a Lagares, guys like that on the bench.
You wonder if there was any thought of putting Flores in at second base. Right-handed hitter, got some pop in his bat.
Ground ball to first. Easy play for Duda.
Well, Matt Harvey is shown the whole repertoire, but here's what makes him such a great pitcher. Watch how he works with Brett Gardner here. Fastball up, and then the curveball to strike him out. Changing speeds, mixing pitches up. Change up to McCann. Now fastball up. Tough pitch for lefty to catch up to, up and in. And he throws a fastball to Headley, up and away to set up that pitch that starts at his hip and breaks back over the inside part of the plate. This is why the future for the Mets is just so bright with this young pitching staff.
Ansel Robles is up in the Mets pen. And Terry Collins saying that Matt Harvey will work this inning and that's it. That would be 5 tonight. That would be 176 2/3 on the season. And you could envision a similar situation in his next 2 starts, which would be his last 2 starts of the year. Although, if the Mets were to have clinched the National League East by the time his last start came around, maybe it would be even a little bit shorter than 5. Maybe it would be 3 or 4, but again, they don't want him to throw too few pitches, Terry Collins told us, because they want him stretched out enough to be a real factor in the playoffs.
Yeah, and that's going to be a difficult, decision for the New York Mets. Terry Collins and the whole staff of the Mets is, how far do you push him in the postseason? Do you leave him out there for 7, 8 innings if he's dealing in a tight game?
Well, and as a teammate, you want to be able to jump on the back of your pitcher in the postseason and know that he's got you through 7 or 8 innings. You don't want to be thinking, are they pulling the plug?
There's a fly ball to right field and deep. Kadire back at the wall. He will make the catch to deny Gregorius. 2 down.
Gregorius does a good job with the pitch up in the zone, 93 miles per hour. And you see the bat speed. He's kind of choked up a little bit on the bat. You see his hands up just a couple inches. This allows him to get that barrel to the ball quickly, but just not enough of it. And Kadire does a good job of getting back and making the grab.
I think, watching Harvey the last couple innings, his velocity has dropped to 93. That's a 94. I mean, we started the game, it was 97, 96, 97.
Sabathia flares one down the line with foul.
CC trying to work that inside out swing.
Again with Harvey, he didn't sustain an injury in the last.
No.
It's just that the topic, for whatever reason, became how many more innings should he pitch. Physically, theoretically, he's the exact same guy that he was 2 weeks ago, 4 weeks ago, 6 weeks ago. It's just now it's become a big topic. How many innings should he pitch? Is there a limit on him? Who wants what? He strikes out Sabathia with a 96-mile-an-hour fastball. his 7th strikeout of the night. Terry Collins told us that's it. And if it is it was 5 very strong innings from the Dark Knight. Sunday Night Baseball on ESPN, presented by Taco Bell. A beautiful night in New York City. We are here at Citi Field, the home of the Mets. A game packed with a lot of tension. It's 1-0. The Mets leading the Yankees going to the bottom of the 5th. Matt Harvey got some handshakes when he came down the stairs into the dugout at the end of the inning. And apparently he is done. And look at the line on Harvey tonight. 1 hit, 1 walk, 7 strikeouts, 77 pitches. Did have a fairly long talk with Terry Collins, although Collins did almost all of the talking. Collins then kind of patted him on the knee, and it appears that he is done. Ruben Tejada, the leadoff hitter for the Mets tonight, begins the bottom of the 5th against CC Sabathia. Tejada doubled and scored in the first, driven in by David Wright, the only run of the ball game.
That's a good adjustment by Sabathia. Tejada's first at bat, he came in the kitchen there, but elevated a little bit, and that's when he drove it down the line for the double. Now he comes back, same spot, and that's his maturity, is being able to have confidence to come back in there, but also locate it right at the knee inside instead of up in the zone.
Ground ball down to third. Big hop for Headley. Low throw dug out by Bird. 1 down. So it will be Robles coming into the game for the Mets in the 6th inning. After 5 very strong innings from Matt Harvey. This is between innings. Terry Collins coming over to him. Harvey doesn't look so happy about it, but Collins is telling him this is the way it's got to be.
Terry played it off like he needed a drink. Oh, by the way, since you're sitting here, but that's, this is what you want to hear. This is what you want to see. Your manager explaining why he's doing what he's doing. The player understands. There could be no misunderstanding now after the game in the media. They're going to, because they're going to ask.
And you want to see that look that Harvey seemed to have, to where it looks like he doesn't want to come out, and that's what you want to see in your pitcher too. Is you don't want to see that he's thinking about anything else but this game.
I mean, if you're the Mets, I'm not sure you could have asked for anything more. He didn't go too little, didn't go too much, threw very well. They've got the lead.
5 innings, over 70 pitches. You know, we keep hearing different numbers for pitches, different numbers for innings, and I think Terry Collins cleared it up pretty good for us today.
In for a strike, 2-1 to David Wright.
Guys, the voices that I'm really fascinated about as this plays out, and this is only one part of what's going to happen. What about his teammates as we get closer to October? What's being said to him by those guys then? What about in October if he's in the middle of a game and this becomes an issue? Got to believe those could be turning point voices.
And I may be completely wrong, but I got to believe the reason they're keeping him to a certain number of innings now is so that they don't have to do it in October. That they don't get in this situation where they feel they have to pull him out after 5 innings or 77 pitches, but I guess that remains to be seen.
And I think a big part of why this hasn't blown up internally is the guy at the plate right now. I think David Wright, and he spoke to Buster before the game. We heard him, but there's a reason he's a captain, and he helped simmer that down, at least internally. Outside it blew up, but the most important thing is in that clubhouse, it doesn't affect everybody else.
Yeah, I can't see a competitor. And, you know, we heard David Wright tell us about how great a competitor that Matt Harvey is. You know, going into the postseason, if they get there, which kind of looks like they are, but going into a postseason start and saying, you know, I hope I can give you a good 5. It's, you know, that ain't going to sit well in the clubhouse. I don't care how much they've tried to squelch it internally. That's a different animal, the postseason, than September.
Another ground ball to third. And Wright retired, 2 down. Time for our high strength performance, brought to you by Chevy Silverado. And it's Matt Harvey. 5 innings. He had 7 strikeouts, including the first 2 batters of the night in Ellsbury and Gardner. He got Bird. He got Sabathia. He got Brian McCann up and in with a fastball. He got Chase Headley looking with a changeup, and then he got Sabathia again.
And it wasn't just the velocity difference for him, you know, mixing in his off speed with his fastball, but really just changing the eye level. You see him go up in the zone and then come down. And I think that's also where he was really effective, was his location.
Here's Cespedes. You know, it's not just Harvey. We should mention that the Mets are skipping Jacob deGrom this time. He's another young pitcher with a lot of innings. So they're going to skip him this time, and he'll come back 5 days after. They just skipped Noah Syndergaard recently. 3 very talented young pitchers. They've got Steven Matz, who pitched well Friday against the Yankees. He's not in any sort of an inning situation. They can roll him out there every 5-6 days if they want.
Thank goodness there's one.
Yeah. They've got the ageless wonder in Bartolo Colon. They've got Jonathan Neese as well. But it's not like Harvey's the only situation that they're monitoring in terms of their starting pitching right now.
Yeah, they're going to skip deGrom, I guess, his next start, from what I understand. And, you know, and it's smart because they have a surplus of pitchers.
And on the other side, Terry Collins has been very upfront, saying they want to wind up with a better record than the Dodgers. They want home field advantage. They don't want to have to go out and face Kershaw and Greinke with the shadow. So you're trying to win, but you're trying to take care of your young arms as well. Sometimes those two things are it's difficult to do both of them.
Well, a good sign is how well Matz did Friday night against the Yankees, and I think just seeing, you know, even Colon and his ability in the season that he's having, is it's not like the Dodgers, where after your number 1 and number 2 there are question marks. For the Mets, they're pretty solid with all 5 and even 6.
Cespedes 0 for 2 on the night. Takes inside of the knees, a full count. The Mets, by the way, just one game back of the Dodgers right now. The Dodgers lost to the Pirates 4-3 earlier today. Fouled back.
You see that pitch down and into a right-hander. When we talked to Sabathia yesterday, he talked about how the new brace that he has on his leg has enabled him to feel more stable in finishing his delivery and getting to that pitch in particular down and into a right-handed hitter. Really feels like it's made a difference in his last 2 starts.
And that would make a big difference in the Yankee rotation. There's a base hit into the left field corner, snapping an 0 for 19 for Cespedes. It's a 2-out double.
Cespedes does a good job of working this at bat. Seemed like Sabathia was headed all over the zone from away to the pitch before that came low and in. And he waits patiently with a full count because he's looking for something that he can get, and even a mistake. Sabathia throws this breaking ball right over the middle of the plate, and for Cespedes, who hasn't been swinging it as well just even the last few days, finds a pitch that he can drive for a double.
Right, and he's lucky that Cespedes has been struggling. Yeah, he's swinging the bat like he was 2 weeks ago. That's a 2-0 game.
So a 2-out double. Here's Daniel Murphy, came on for the injured Juan Uribe last half inning. Murphy hitting just 186 over his last 17 games. And takes a pitch down the middle for a strike. On the season, Murphy hitting 274, a dozen homers, 33 doubles, kind of your typical Daniel Murphy season. He has played a lot of second, he has played a lot of first, played some third when David Wright was out. Mets 1 for 5 tonight with runners in scoring position, leading by the narrowest of margins, 1-0 here in the bottom of the 5th. Breaking ball swung on and missed, 0-2.
That's a tough pitch to lefties. Off speed, moving away. And that's why that lefty-lefty matchup ends up being one of the more difficult, I feel, in baseball, just because of that movement going away from the bat.
Strike 3 called to end the inning. 5th of the night for Sabathia. Matt Harvey done for the night. 5 shutout innings, 1 hit, 7 strikeouts, and a successful return, if you will, to the Mets rotation after not having pitched for the last 12 days. He got his work done. He pitched well. He leaves with a lead. Hey, the most popular way to follow the action of the September pennant races is with MLB.com at bat, the #1 app for live baseball. It piped down Enjoy live look-ins, highlights, replay reviews, scores, StatCast, live radio broadcasts, and more. Get the MLB.com at bat app now. Keep up with the pennant races in true HD quality on MLB.tv Premium. Watch every out-of-market game live on more than 400 supported devices. Real-time highlights, live look-ins, pitch tracking widget, and more. Visit MLB.tv today. Get the feeling Mets fans are excited right now.
I don't blame them.
I sat in the stands yesterday, and it was just awesome to hear just the intensity. And granted, I don't hear a lot of New Yorkers very often, but just even the venomous comments that get yelled, and just a lot of emotion right now in New York.
Something happened interesting when Robles came in. Darno goes out to talk to him, which is normal. Second sign, there's a runner on second, whatever. But Laz Diaz was out there talking to him. I've never seen this. I don't understand. I mean, you see the catcher who's warming him up. Like, what are we doing? Like, I don't understand. Robles has had some issues with the quick pitch and the whole thing that Johnny Cueto and them do. I don't know. Yeah, I don't understand why the home plate umpire would go out to talk to the relief pitcher coming in. I mean, if it's a beanball game, it's one of those things where he'll go and tell him, look, both teams have been warned, but that's not the case here.
So you think it might be the quick pitch thing? Because
it's caused a lot of, it's funny when he does it, it causes a stir. When Cueto, Ventura, and Herrera, no one says anything in the American League. I guess it's National League guys that don't like it.
Well, one thing they like about him, whatever the motion is he's got a big arm. 96, 97 miles an hour with a fastball. Has given up just 1 run and 4 hits in his last 12 2/3 innings. He is a rookie. 25 years of age, from the Dominican Republic, facing the top of the Yankee order. 96 on the edge, 1-2.
And what Terry Collins kept reiterating to us when we talked to him about Robles, he's not afraid. And that's huge coming in. If he's going to be their 6th, 7th inning guy, there's the quick pitch.
Yep, I guess it wasn't about the quick pitch. Ground ball over the mound, barehanded by Murphy, but the wide throw pulls Duda off the bag, and Ellsbury's on his way to second.
And this is what Ellsbury brings to the top of the lineup. He got on his last at bat on an error because he forces, with his speed, infielders to have to rush. And you see right here off the end of the bat, Murphy having to barehand this ball would have been a fantastic play, but he ends up throwing it wide left because he's rushing. Watch him throw across his body, one of the more difficult throws to have to make. But that's what Ellsbury does with his speed. He forces fielders to get outside of their comfort zone, have to make a play like this to try and get him out.
It's a single and an error. The tying run is at second with nobody out here in the 6th inning. And the batter is Brett Gardner, 1 for 2, had an infield hit his last time up.
This brings the bunt in play. Gardner has to get Ellsbury to third base regardless. When this at bat ends, Ellsbury has to be on third.
Shows bunt, takes up an away ball 1.
And this is where, for Robles, really utilizing that right side, that third base side of the plate to prevent Gardner from trying to pull the ball to the right side.
Well, that high fastball at 97 is kind of difficult to bunt too.
David Wright down in third, looking at the plate, looking at the runner, trying to survey the situation here as the bunt is popped foul, third base side, 1-1. Gardner has 7 sacrifices on the season.
Gardner's been struggling offensively, so you can understand the bunt, but also, Robles has that running fastball at 96, 97. It makes it more difficult to pull the ball.
Shows again, pushes it back towards the mound, going to third, and in and out of the glove. Somehow of Wright, it looked like they would have had him had he been able to hang on to it, but everybody is safe.
This is a good location for the bunt, making Robles have to come off the mound. He does a good job knowing where to go, throwing to third base, and Wright, I think, did have him at third if he's able to hang on.
He couldn't get out of his glove. Robles couldn't get the bottom of his glove initially, and then he threw a 97-mile-an-hour seed to David Wright from about 30 feet away. And David had to try to backhand him. You saw him looking at Ellsbury, too, while he's trying to backhand that ball. Took his eye off of it, and the Yankees are in business right here to try to have a multiple-run inning.
Wright charged with an error on the play. Now Beltran rips one foul. Fielder's choice E5. So fielder's choice allowing Gardner to reach, E5 on the right, allowing Ellsbury to be safe. And this one-run lead is even more precarious right now with the heart of the Yankee lineup coming up. The Yankee fans, and there are plenty of them here tonight, starting to make some noise. Ripped into right center, a base hit, and it's getting all the way to the wall. One run is home, and here comes a second run as Gardner scores on a two-run double by Beltran.
Even though Beltran was 0 for 2 coming in, his at-bats against Harvey were really good. And there's another example. He's just trying to hit a ball in the hole, but he's trying to get Ellsbury in from third. But I mean, you look at that swing. This is why the longevity and the great offensive numbers of Carlos Beltran have lasted this long. But yeah, that ball's a scorcher. If Lagares can't cut that ball off, you know you hit that hard. 2 runs come in, and now you got a pull hitter and McCann that can get Beltran over to third.
What's crazy, Craig, he didn't even use his legs. I mean, that was just all upper half.
Here's Brian McCann, a career-high 26 home runs on the season, including one yesterday. He's in the top 10 in the American League in RBIs. Somehow in New York, he's got a quiet 26 and 89 on the season.
And that has had to catch 31 regular pitchers.
Yeah.
2 players who tried to pitch.
Swing and a miss, 0-2.
Now here's where Brian needs to cut his swing down. Do whatever you can to get Beltran over to third base. He took his shot there on an 0-1 pitch to try to hit one out of the ballpark, but now he has to just stay within himself, try to get him over.
And he blows it by him at 97 for the first out. Got to be especially tough, guys, for Met fans to see a former Met in Carlos Beltran deliver a hit like that.
Yeah, I'm sure deep down they still respect him for what he did when he was a Met, but yeah, I bet they don't like him today.
That's how all Met fans feel right there. They're 6.5 up with 2 weeks to go in the season. But again, we all have Mets fans. Many of them wear orange nail polish. And this is how they feel. They're worried. They're petrified that 6.5 is not enough. Even though the Mets have been so good for the last couple of months. They won't relax until such time, if it comes to that they have clinched. Now a pitch gets to the backstop, and Beltran will come to third.
Yeah, Terry Collins said that Robles has been working on his secondary stuff. He think they've gotten better. That looked like a hard slider that Darno just couldn't get to. Frustrating too. You make great pitches to keep McCann from moving Beltran over to third base. You strike him out, and now you throw a wild pitch on a 1-0 pitch. Now it's
Infield in now for the Mets. As Bird takes inside 3-0, he's done a nice job filling in for the injured Mark Teixeira. He's got 7 home runs. A guy who spent some time at AA and AAA this year.
I think I'd turn him loose right here.
Three and one. Three and two. Incidentally, the Mets' schedule before that season-ending series against Washington is Atlanta, Cincinnati, and Philadelphia. 3 teams that have had very tough seasons.
2 of those teams are playing for a draft pick.
Check the swing on the appeal, confirmed, and he will take the walk. Pitching coach Dan Warthen on his way to the mound. Well, Matt Harvey goes 5, dominates, 1 hit, 1 walk, 7 strikeouts. They bring in a Hansel Robles. Daniel Murphy with a do-or-die play. It winds up being a base hit and an error. Then the throw to third. David Wright with an error. Can't handle the throw. And then Carlos Beltran drives them both home with a 2-run double to right center. And just like that, the Yankees have the lead. The Yankees trying to pick up some ground on Toronto. The Blue Jays lost to Boston earlier today as the Mets pen gets active again. We talked a lot about the Mets. How about the Yankees situation? If they win, they're 2.5 back of Toronto. And guess who's playing where beginning tomorrow night? The Blue Jays will host the Yankees Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. You can see the Tuesday, Wednesday games on ESPN. If you weren't with us earlier, though, no Masahiro Tanaka in the Wednesday game for the Yankees. A grade 1 hamstring strain. He's going to have a start skipped. So tomorrow it's Adam Warren against David Price. Tuesday, Luis Severino against Marco Estrada. And Wednesday, Ivan Nova filling in for Tanaka against Marcus Stroman. Eric Adele, Sean Gilmartin up in the Mets pen. So the Yankees trying to figure it out on the fly in their rotation a little bit. Remember, Nathan Eovaldi is out as well. They hope to have him back for the postseason should they get there. But he had been pitching better. It's just outside, a ball and 2 strikes now on Chase Headley. So there's a lot on the line for both of these teams, needless to say, with 2 weeks left in the season. Runners on the corners, just 1 out. And the 2-2. Swung on and missed, 2 down. A big out for Robles. If you're just joining us, a big night for Matt Harvey in his return to the mound for the Mets. First time in 12 days, through 77 pitches, went 5 innings, 1 hit, 1 walk. Crucky, what'd you like?
Well, I like the fact that he was throwing all his pitches mostly for strikes. His command at times was a little off, but for the most part, for not pitching for 12 days, I thought, you know, if you can imagine 7-8 innings of this in the postseason, Terry Collins got a chance.
And again, from our understanding, from speaking with Terry Collins before the game, the plan going forward seems to be 2 more starts. Again, probably somewhat abbreviated, as they try to keep him sharp but not overuse him before what they hope is a trip to the playoffs.
Well, if they were worried about 12 days off and him not being sharp, I mean, they can definitely check that box and know that they could do it again.
Dustin Ackley with a drive, deep right center. Gone! And it's a 5-run inning for the Yankees.
Joe Girardi talks about the bat speed that he likes from Dustin Ackley and his ability to get this pitch up in the zone. The speed and the velocity just get enough on it. He hits a little bit under it, but enough because of the velocity of Robles to be able to get this pitch out.
Dustin Ackley's swinging it right now for the Yankees. He's turned into a nice pickup since they got him from Seattle, and the Yankee bench explodes as they have taken a 5-1 lead here in the 6th. That is it for Robles. Gil Martin on his way in from the bullpen. 5-1 Yankees here in the top of the 6th.
And without warning, your knees get buckled. Then suddenly, everything's changed. You can't predict baseball. That's rule number 1.
Ain't that the truth? The Yankees in Toronto to take on the Blue Jays tomorrow, Tuesday, and Wednesday. You can see the Tuesday and Wednesday games right here on ESPN, part of a very big week, including the Dodgers hosting the Diamondbacks Wednesday, the battle for Texas, and maybe the battle for first place in the American League West, the Rangers and Astros, Friday night on ESPN2. And then 1 week from tonight, we'll be at Wrigley as the Pirates visit the Cubs. Sean Gilmartin facing Didi Gregorius. A 5-run inning for the Yankees, culminating with a 3-run homer from Dustin Ackley, knocking Hansel Robles out of the game. Sean Gilmartin, the left-hander, comes in his place. Robles gave it up. You feel a little bit badly for him. There were 2 errors in the inning, one by Murphy, one by Wright. But the Yankees, give them credit, they took advantage. And they score 5 runs, all unearned, but 5 nonetheless, and they're up 5-1 here in the top of the 6th. Actually, one earned, forgive me, 1 earned run, 4 unearned runs.
Well, we talked about it in the open, about the key for this Yankees team has been the top.
Now Gregorius rips one into right field for a base hit. The Dyer will hold him to a long single.
And this is why. I mean, they live and die on the home run. The best team in baseball, 50% of their runs are scored via the home run. 13 of the last 14 games they've had a home run, and that is about the table setters. It's not just the solo home run. When they come up big, as they did last night, as they've done tonight, it's with runners on base, and it starts at the top.
Here's Sabathia. Lines it to the right of the shortstop Tejada, and the inning is over. Dustin Ackley with a big 3-run homer, a huge inning for the Yankees. Sunday Night Baseball on ESPN, presented by Taco Bell. Non-stop action, heart-pounding excitement, historic performances. Don't miss the 2015 postseason beginning October 6th. Go to MLB.com/postseason for a full schedule. And by the way, October the 6th is the date of the American League Wild Card game. A game we'll have for you here on ESPN. 5-1 Yankees going to the bottom of the 6th. CC Sabathia back on the mound. And the first pitch in for a strike to Travis d'Arnaud, as Stephen Drew has taken over at second base for Dustin Ackley, who just hit the big home run in the top half of the inning. d'Arnaud, a walk and a ground out. He'll be followed by Lucas Duda and then Michael Kadire. Meanwhile, there is activity now in the Yankee pen, with CC Sabathia at 94 pitches. The right-hander is Nick Rumbelow, and the left-hander is Chris Capuano.
I really like the way CC has worked the lower part of the zone with his fastball, mixing in his off speed. As Buster talked about earlier, with that knee brace now, not being afraid to come inside to these righties when he needs to, because that's what helps set up his money pitches, which are on the outside part of the plate.
And d'Arnaud chases a 1.5 feet off the plate to strike out.
Think about how he started this game, giving up the back-to-back doubles in the first inning, gave up that run, and since then he's coming hard with the fastball away, then not afraid to come inside with the fastball as well. You see the two-seam coming inside of these righties. What I like is the changeup. The changeup, the last two strikeouts, done a nice job of also getting that pitch to be deceptive, and as he sets up that last strikeout to d'Arnaud.
Here's Duda.
And a lot of times they've had situations where once Sabathia is going through a lineup for a third time, you're starting to look to bring in some relief. But Girardi told us before the game he's holding his stuff longer at this stage in the season.
And make no mistake, this is an important guy, even though he's had a down season. If the Yankees are to get where they want to get, they're looking for a big contribution from him in the rotation.
Two pretty good breaking balls to start off Duda with in this at bat too. You got to be impressed with what CeCe's done tonight. You know, the first inning you thought maybe this could get away from him, back-to-back doubles to start the game, and it's been shut down ever since.
I think that's the maturity too of a pitcher that knows. I mean, he's not even going to fret at all if he gives up that first run. But the biggest thing too, without him having the velocity that he's had in the past, is being able to really pitch. And that's where you see that changeup that he's locating, the backdoor slider, pitches that he didn't rely on as much because he could just blow it by guys, and now he's not. So he's utilizing his command and mixing his pitches.
Got him. Back-to-back strikeouts in the inning for Sabathia.
I can speak from experience. This is a tough pitch. A lefty throws that. It looked like a two-seamer that just ran in on Duda down in the strike zone. See how that pitch kind of dove in, and you're looking at that pitch thinking, okay, center of the plate, maybe middle in, but that one, when it finishes down and in to a left-handed hitter, is a tough one to lefty to pick up.
7 strikeouts on the night for Sabathia. Here's Kadire, 1 for 2, doubled his last time up. Pitching with less velocity this year than he used to have, everybody knows that, but pitching with a little bit more velocity tonight than he has averaged this year. We've seen a lot of 91s and 92s.
If he wins this game tonight, guys, this will be career win number 213 for him. That would tie Mark Burley. And there are only 2 active pitchers ahead of those 2 guys. Tim Hudson, who's going to retire after this year. And, of course, Bartolo Colon.
Of course. This is his 450th career start. Sabathia is the active leader already in strikeouts and complete games.
And how about his last at bat? A little line drive action, a shortstop that was placed 2 feet to the left or right. He would have had himself possibly, well, I don't want to say a double, but
a long single. Sent foul, 2-2. He has won a Cy Young. He has taken the ball whenever possible, and he's been at this a long time. That's a lot of pitches, 48,000. This includes the postseason. The 450 number was regular season starts. Over 3,000 career innings, including the playoffs. Softly into right field, a base hit. Now on Lagares.
Dyer's had a good night tonight. Doubled, throwing his bat and getting a single. He's finding a way.
Live K-Zone All Game is brought to you by Booking.com. Inside of the belt, ball 1 to Lagares, who's popped up and been intentionally walked. Lagares, great defensive player, not playing all the time, playing more against lefties. Cespedes is in left tonight, but Cespedes has actually been playing a lot of center field for the Mets. Dyer can play 2-3 different spots. Murphy, Uribe, Johnson. Sabathia now at 107 pitches, his season high 111 Tuesday against the Rays.
Which tells you its two best starts have probably been this one and Monday night.
Looking for his first win since July the 8th. He's got just 4 wins on the season. Fouled off 2-1.
I think that's the difference between CC Sabathia's last 2 starts and what has gone on during the season. You know, the start of the season is, 2-0. When you don't feel like you can throw it by people anymore, you have to try to create ways to get guys out. So you think, okay, I have to throw it away. He just buried that pitch in on Lagares' hands, and that's the way, to me, he has to pitch now.
Eric Campbell is in the on-deck circle right now for the Mets in the pitcher spot.
Wilmer Flores guy's been hovering around. Terry Collins just talked to him. I wonder if they might make an adjustment at some point.
Flores looking on for the Mets dugout. Big pitch here for Sabathia. Fouled off in a full count on Lagares.
He's challenging him inside. That's 3 straight pitches. Trying to back him off a little bit. And I wonder if now 3-2 he tries to come with that backdoor slider or anything away.
Two batters in. The Mets had a run off Sabathia. They haven't done any damage since. Runner goes. 3-2 swung on, grounded sharply to the left of Gregorius. What a play. Outstanding play by D.D. Gregorius. And the inning is over. We're at the end of 6 now at Citi Field. CC loves it. Yankees up 5-1. Colts as the Colts try to rebound after a tough loss last week. Monday Night Football. The Jets and Colts at 8:15 Eastern Time tomorrow on ESPN. Matthew Broderick, Sarah Jessica Parker, some Met fans are here tonight. The King, Henrik Lundqvist, is in the house tonight at Citi Field. Right now, though, it is the Yankees who have the lead, 5-1, going to the top of the 7th inning. The new pitcher for the Mets, left-hander Eric O'Flaherty, who was acquired by the Mets from the A's just prior to the trade deadline at the end of July. He's given up 11 runs in just 7 1/3 innings as a member of the Mets. Top of the order, Ellsbury, Gardner, and Beltran for the Yankees. Liner into center, a base hit, and Ellsbury's on for the 3rd time tonight. Has been around for a long time. These are the combined numbers between Oakland and the Mets. Throw to first, the runner back easily, facing another left-handed batter now in Brett Gardner.
And if you're Joe Girardi, of course, who's probably listening to us right now, and the rest of the Yankee staff, this would be a great, if you can add on 2 or 3 runs right here, it pretty much will guarantee you that, Betances and Miller don't have to be used or even get up in this game.
Well, that could be a big key. Remember back a couple of weeks ago, the Yankees were heading into a series with Toronto, 4-game series. And in the game, actually in the 2 games before that series, both close games, Girardi didn't use either Betances or Miller. And although Betances has thrown a lot of innings, Girardi never will use a pitcher 3 days in a row. No Yankee reliever has pitched 3 days in a row at any point this season. So if the Yankees can get one of their key guys some rest, they will try to, especially with another series with Toronto starting tomorrow. There's one, but that's all they'll get, especially after it rolled under the glove of O'Flaherty. One thing though, if the Yankees have a lead late, good luck wrestling it away from them with Dellin Betances and Andrew Miller. They have been as good a 1-2 combo at the end of a bullpen as there has been in baseball. The Yankees, when leading after 6 innings, are 61-2. When leading after 7 innings are 68-2, and when leading after 8 innings are 75-0. Get them early or don't get them at all. Beltran swings at the first pitch. Shallow center, 2 down. Sets it up, guys, for a huge game tomorrow in Toronto with Adam Warren starting for the Yankees and David Price on the mound for the Blue Jays. If the Yankees win this game, they're 2.5 back. If they can somehow find a way to beat David Price, they'd be 1.5 back. 2 more games to go with Toronto. But if Price and the Blue Jays can win it, it would be 3.5 with 2 more games to come. And again, the Tuesday and Wednesday games can be seen on ESPN.
And I was really looking forward to the Tanaka-Stroman matchup, especially how strong Stroman has looked as of late. Tanaka obviously coming out with a hamstring injury.
Blue Jays 3 up as of now. The Blue Jays have 1 off day between now and the end of the season. The Yankees don't. The Yankees finish the season as McCann gets hit with 30 games in 31 days, and they are out of off days now between now and the end of the season. Tanaka will not start Wednesday. Grade 1 hamstring strain. They hope he will be ready for his next turn.
I thought Stefania made a really good point earlier in this game about the concern not being so much with the grade 1 hamstring, but also with his arm and making sure that any weakness in his lower half doesn't affect anything that's been good going on with his elbow.
I mean, if he's healthy and if the Yankees are in the play, let's say they're in a wild card game, don't you guys think this would be the first choice? This is the guy?
Yes, without question.
Greg Bird 0 for 2 with a walk. Just foul.
Guys, if there were any kind of a problem with Tanaka for that start, I think the guy who probably is next in line is going to be Michael Pineda.
Pineda, all kinds of talent, has had an up and down season. Luis Severino, very young, but has pitched very well for the Yankees. CC Sabathia pitching well again here tonight. Adam Warren recently moving into the rotation, taking the place of Ivan Nova, who just came out, but will go back in at least for Wednesday. With Tanaka missing the start, and again Nathan Eovaldi is out with an injury, but they hope to get him back for the postseason, possibly.
I mean, I think of all the Yankee pitchers, Pineda to me has the best pure stuff when he's right. And you know, you would think he would be a guy that could have a lot of success in October with his fast power, fastball, slider, and off-speed pitches. But to me, if Tanaka's healthy, he's got to get the ball in a wild card game.
If the playoffs were to begin today, it would be the Yankees hosting the Houston Astros in the American League wild card game.
And we will be doing it, right?
Wherever and whomever is in it. Runner breaks for third. And that'll be a wild pitch charge to O'Flaherty. Gardner takes third. McCann holds his ground at first.
Took a bad hop off the grass. Like O'Flaherty got his spike stuck, I think. Something. He keeps looking down, but I mean, that was. It made the dirt. That's okay. I tell you what, good play by d'Arnaud to keep that ball front, keep the double play in order, or 2 outs. You don't need a double play, but keep an extra runner out of scoring position.
2-2. Down and away, stopped again by d'Arnaud and a full count.
I think Henrik Lundqvist would be proud of
that's a good call, Crocky.
Last 2 plays d'Arnaud just made.
Yeah. McCann will be on the move from first.
Maybe. Might be tired.
And it's fouled back.
I mean, this is something that Greg Bird is going to eventually figure out when a pitcher spikes 2 sliders in a row. You can't be late on the fastball because you know he's not going to throw another slider. And he was late on that 3-2 fastball in. That's something that you'll figure out to turn on a little quicker.
On the appeal, he didn't go, and the walk will load the bases. And here comes Terry Collins. That's going to be all for Eric O'Flaherty. Eric Goodell will come into the game now for the Mets. The Yankees up 4, looking to blow it open here in the 7th. Back at Citi Field, the Yankees with a 5-1 lead on the Mets. Top of the 7th. The bases loaded. 2 outs. So many games meaning so much around baseball. And here's the latest today as we take a look first at the American League playoff picture. The Blue Jays lost today 4-3. Boston takes 2 out of 3. Houston with a win over Oakland today. They take 2 out of 3 from the A's. The Angels lost today, but still won 3 out of 4 from the Twins. And the Indians beat the White Sox today to get back to the 500 mark. So they are still clinging to some slim playoff hopes. If the American League playoffs began today, it would be the Astros in New York in the wild card game, the winner to take on the Royals, and the Rangers would play the Blue Jays in the other division series. But Yankees still trying to chase down the Blue Jays. Blue Jays hoping to chase down the Royals for the best record. And Angels, Twins, Indians hoping to catch up to the Astros for the second wild card. It's a little more clear cut of the National League.
I wish I could dive into that right there.
Big bowl of popcorn.
Oh my gosh.
Mouth open.
Eric Adell making his 30th appearance of the season. The bases are loaded, 2 outs. The batter is Chase Headley. Upstairs, ball 1.
So what you're trying to say is about this American League is we have no idea where we're going to be for the
no
wild card
idea.
game.
Nothing has been decided, which is the way it should be.
I agree.
That's what makes it fun.
And you like to see teams, Houston and Texas playing later in the week. Angels playing Houston this week. Blue Jays playing the Yankees this week. It's good stuff. Do you have a passport?
I do.
Good.
I got one this year.
First one?
First one
Congrats.
ever. Been denied.
Well, you got over the border in '93. I know that.
We didn't have to have a passport.
You didn't have to use passports.
That's true.
Birth certificates.
Meanwhile, 3-0. And the strike, 3-1.
Borderline strike at that. Every once in a while, you just have to throw one down the middle and hope they hit it at someone, Dan.
Think that's coming here?
I mean, 3-0, he painted. I don't know.
3-2. Everybody will be on the move. Bases loaded, 2 outs. Just high for ball 4 to force in a run.
They got just missed by a hair, didn't it, up and away?
Let's see it catch just the back corner of the plate. It misses early and then just kind of drops back down.
6-1 Yankees. Stephen Drew gets his first at bat. Drew came on defensively for Ackley an inning ago.
This is big for the Yankees. This could ensure, even though it's only the 7th inning, that Betances and Miller don't have to be used today.
Shallow left center, draws a crowd, and it'll be Lagares to make the catch to finally end the inning. Another run for the Yankees. 7th inning stretch, 6-1 Yankees lead. Well, the night began with a Matt Harvey on the mound for the New York Mets. 5 innings, 1 hit, 7 strikeouts later. A job well done in his first start in 12 days. CC Sabathia gave up a run after 2 batters tonight and then didn't give up another one. He went 6 good innings tonight. And new Yankee Dustin Ackley delivered a 3-run homer that broke it open. That made it 5-1. It is now 6-1 for the Yankees, trying to take 2 out of 3 and move within 2.5 of the Blue Jays in the American League East. A loss for the Mets, and their lead over Washington would be 6 with 13 left to play. Let's take a look at tonight's home team advantage, brought to you by Quicken Loans.
Matt Harvey just dealing tonight. What he did a good job with is locating not only his fastball but his off speed, being able to come in with his slider, his changeup, and really change the eye level for a lot of these hitters. Worked up in the zone with that fastball, coming low in the zone, in, out. Command was an issue. Anytime you have that pitch count, possibly knowing that he had to be efficient, and he was.
Meanwhile, the new pitcher for the Yankees is rookie right-hander Nick Rumbelow, making his 15th appearance of the season. 4 different stints with the Yankees beginning in June, the most recent a September call-up. So with this kind of a lead, you wonder if Joe Girardi, or by extension Rob Thompson, the bench coach who has taken over after Girardi was tossed out, if we will see Betances and Miller. Obviously the Yankees would love to avoid having to use them if at all possible.
They'd like to avoid even getting them up.
Yep. So we may see, it's September and they've got 14 relievers. We may see a lot of them. That's Curtis Granderson, by the way, pinch hitting now in the pitcher spot. And Granderson, somewhat quietly, has had a really productive season. Hitting for power, drawing walks, scoring runs. As he fouls it off 1 and 2.
This looks like this is the Mets trying to go for this thing in this inning. If Granderson's going to hit, they got Michael Conforto in the on deck circle, is going to hit for Lagares. Going to empty the bench, try to get back in this game.
I like it. I think this is a team that's been kind of quiet the last couple days offensively. We talk about how much they've done since the trade deadline, but this weekend the Yankees have done a pretty good job, minus Friday night, of quieting a lot of these big bats.
Down the right field line, but foul. Well, this is between the top half of the first and the bottom half of the first, when the Yankee relievers made their way out to the bullpen. And I don't even think Betances and Miller were with them. Now Gardner was in there. You see those weren't all relievers, but they have 14 relievers on the roster right now.
A couple floats out there, you can have the Macy's Day Parade.
What do you guys think of the
ridiculous?
The September
you want to think about it? Yeah.
No,
expanded
it's
rosters.
absolutely ridiculous.
What would you do, Commish?
I'd let him call up about 5 guys, extra pitchers, in the month of April, when starting pitchers are only going 4 or 5, 6 innings, and that's when you need more pitching. If you need more pitching now, you've done a bad job of managing your pitching staff.
Would you let the rosters be expanded, say, to 30 now, but you have to pick 25 guys?
That would be fine.
So you have like a taxi squad or something in September.
Yeah, guys that shag. We call them shaggers. Just go out there and shag. Leave the regular players alone. Go out and shag for us.
There's Michael Conforto, and the rookie's done an outstanding job for the Mets. Another reason why the offense has been better in the second half of the season. Former first-round pick just last year out of Oregon State has really injected some.
Dan, we talk about the strength of schedule coming down the stretch of September. How do you know what the strength of schedule is? With the Marlins, with the Phillies, who do you know? They're all in, you got 52 guys on your team.
Well, I think that's what makes it so hard to predict, is what looks to be easy when you're facing pitcher after pitcher, and then you're able to use a pitcher for a batter, bring in another one for another batter. And I can't imagine being a hitter knowing that you might face 14 different guys that night.
Try to get good video on the guys that pitched in Double-A this year. the Rivera guy we got in 1995. 86, 87 sinker. Huh. About a 98 mile an hour cutter. Had the wrong Rivera. No video available.
2-2 the count on a Conforto. Playing a lot of left field against righties for the Mets as he swings through the outside fastball, 2 down.
You know who complains about that the most? Are the managers we talk to every week. You know, privately, they'll complain about the fact that the other team has brought in 8 different pitchers in 3 innings, but then they feel like they have to follow along, and they're the ones who quietly would really be in favor of some kind of a change with that rule.
You never hear any talk about it, though, that it's going to be changed. You never hear that it's, you know, on the front burner for baseball. Two down in the inning, and here's David Wright. The Mets trailing 6-1. They've committed 3 errors in this game.
You know, you play by certain rules, right?
Yep.
One set of rules in April, May, June, July, August, and then all of a sudden September the rules change.
Yep.
It shouldn't. It's common sense. I need to talk to Rob Manfred.
Call him up.
I don't have his number, trust me. They don't.
That one's blocked.
Well, I'm sure it is.
You got to keep in mind too, the union would have to go along with any sort of change, and they of course monitor service time.
I mean, one way you could partially change it is you allow as many guys up to 40 to be called up, but again, you just say for each game you can only have 25 active. Now you'd have your starting pitchers who just pitched or will pitch. They wouldn't be active.
Yeah.
So you could still have a lot of relievers, but you could cut it down a little bit, I would think.
I think they should be 30 men called up in April. Get out, break spring training with 5 extra pitchers.
Yeah.
And that way, you know, when your starter only goes 5 or however many, 80 pitches, whatever they start out at, then you have someone there to take their place. And then once September, it's 25 and 25 only.
Would you like to see rosters expanded overall? Like, would you like to see a 27-man roster? 28? No. Because pitching staffs used to be 9, now they're 12. So be it.
So what, are you going to have 14 pitchers?
Crazy, huh?
Well, they should build one of those things they have in the airport to get you from one terminal to another.
The moving walkway.
The moving walkway to get you from the dugout to the mound for these managers. Some of these guys aren't young anymore.
Yes, he did.
Man.
Wright saying at least ask down at first. Les Diaz says I got it right here. And the frustration for the Mets continues tonight. Wright strikes out, end of 7, 6-1 Yankees. Baseball on ESPN is presented by Taco Bell's new $1 Daredevil Loaded Grillers. Try all 3 if you dare. And in part by Mazda. Driving matters. Beautiful shot here of New York City. Been a great weather weekend. Nice night for a ball game here at Citi Field. Mets fans not having so much fun. A lot of Yankees fans here. And they're sticking around probably a little bit more than the Mets fans are right now. But the Yankees leading 6-1 as we go to the top of the 8th inning. Didi Gregorius will lead it off against a new Mets pitcher, right-hander Carlos Torres, who becomes the 6th pitcher of the night for the Mets. And a broken back ground ball past the mound. And the new shortstop, Wilmer Flores, makes the play. Big stretch by Lucas Duda. Flores just coming on for Ruben Tejada after Tejada was lifted for a pinch hitter last inning.
You see the communication with Flores making sure that he knows that he got to avoid a collision with Murphy, and Duda doing a nice job of stretching out to make sure to get the out.
And you probably knew who was coming up, judging from the noise. Some of them like him, some of them don't.
Well, this is just a 6-1 lead. You're just trying to get him in at bat. Yeah, hasn't done much in the last few days, so this is you're going in Toronto. You know they're going to need him as the DH. He's going to get 4 at bats. Might as well give him one here.
He's pinch hit in each of the first 2 games of this series, a walk and a flyout. 32 home runs on the season for Alex Rodriguez. '83 RBIs, hitting .255. I don't know if anybody predicted this kind of a season for A-Rod.
We were there for his first spring training game, and when you saw his swing, of course he hadn't played in a year and a half, but I thought if he hit 15 to 20, he was going to have a great year. Just watching his swings in spring training, but sometimes the great ones have a way of fooling you. Just when you think they might be done.
Swings through it, 2-2. He passed Willie Mays in home runs this year. He passed the 2,000 RBI mark, on the verge of 2,000 runs. He passed 3,000 hits. Lays off the breaking ball, a full count.
Well, I think one of the hardest things for him is coming in as a pinch hitter. You saw the numbers right around 130, and he's kind of even been stretching himself out within this at bat.
Inside, ball 4. Looks like we're going to have a pinch runner. Rico Noel will run for Rodriguez. We got to see some live pitches, and he'll be back in there as the DH tomorrow night in Toronto. Noel, the designated September call-up pinch runner, still looking for that first major league plate appearance. Here's Jacoby Ellsbury. And he's running.
How about that first pitch? Don't waste any time. Your jog out there is your warm-up. Picked a good one, too, and the changeup. 80 miles per hour. He gets a great jump. There's no chance.
Used to be a no-no. Up 5, 8th inning, 9th inning, stealing bases. But the way the Mets have had a tendency to come back in games, and the fact that I'm sure the Yankees, the last thing they want to do is have to worry about Betances and Miller. Try to score it, try to get this extra run across.
On the appeal, Ellsbury went. Live K-Zone all game is brought to you by Booking.com. Yankees 6, Mets 1. The Yankees batting here in the top of the 8th inning, trying to take 2 out of 3. Ellsbury lines one into left field. That's a base hit. Noel's going to get the wave and score without a throw.
Now, this is the best that I've seen Jacoby Ellsbury really since he's come back from his injury. And I think it started out because this game he just got on base. He figured out a way, had an error early, then he got a couple base hits. But you watch this swing, and this is to me classic Jacoby Ellsbury. He's not trying to pull the ball. He's not trying to hit a home run. He's really just trying to get on base and go with this pitch. His last 2 at bats I feel like have been his best swings because that's all he's been trying to do. His last one he hit a nice line drive up the middle. This one he goes with, finds a nice line drive to left.
Here's Brett Gardner, 1 for 4 tonight.
And they want these guys hot going into Toronto. Looks like Ellsbury's getting there, and Gardner might still be struggling a hair, but a good at bat right here. You never know what that can do for you getting on that plane to go to Toronto.
Yeah, remember, Ellsbury has 3 hits, but he actually had that one ball he hit back to the mound that Harvey was charging error on. So he could have easily wound up with a 4-hit game tonight.
And I think, Buster, that's kind of what broke it open for him. Sometimes it's just that little confidence seeing first base again when you haven't been there in a while. And it was a miss hit, but he got on base, and it opened it up for him the rest of the game.
Better than 43,000 here at Citi Field tonight. The crowd has thinned somewhat in the last couple of innings as the Yankees have extended the lead. Up 7-1 here in the top of the 8th. As Torres misses up and away, 2 balls and 2 strikes. Getting a little chilly. Last 2 weeks of the regular season, playoffs almost upon us as Gardner strikes out for the 2nd out of the inning.
He's just not seeing it right now. I mean, his last few at bats, I mean, even when he tried to lay down the bunt, he finally was able to get it down, but a guy who usually has great knowledge of the strike zone, and here it's a strike, but you can just tell the way he looks at the ball as it passes him is he's not seeing it as clearly as he has in the beginning of the season.
There's Beltran. He's been seeing it pretty well, hitting better recently than he was earlier in the season, and he's got probably the biggest hit of the game, even though Ackley hit a 3-run homer later in the inning. The 2-run double by Beltran turned a 1-0 deficit into a 2-1 lead for the Yankees. Ackley's homer would make it 5-1. And they've tacked on single runs in the 7th and again here in the 8th to now lead 7-1.
Well, Dan, it was his home run yesterday in the 1st inning that set the tone for the rest of the game. Ellsbury and Gardner both got on base, little singles, and he just mashed a monster home run, 100-mile-per-hour pitch off of Syndergaard. Even though that was early on in the game, the Mets never recovered. Here's the pitch, 100 miles an hour down in the zone to Beltran. Look how easy his swing is, and that's just a guy who understands the pitcher he's facing and the simplicity of a hard fastball and just getting to the barrel of the ball.
Another walk.
This is where you're glad Brian McCann had his head up walking to the on-deck circle. Beltran with the walk, a little too much pine tar. Watch the hang time. Yeah, pine tar. Oh, but stuck. Heads up, B-Mac. Here we go. Hey. I used to love to do that on turf. Tell you after we're done.
Get the bounce.
Yeah, get the bouncy thing coming out here.
Another pitching change coming for the Mets.
It's about some team struck by magic. Out of nowhere. Nobody touching them, nobody stopping them. You can't predict baseball. That's rule number one.
The playoffs barely 2 weeks away. Non-stop action, heart-pounding excitement, historic performances. Don't miss the 2015 postseason beginning October the 6th. Go to MLB.com/postseason for a full schedule. It all begins with the American League wildcard game on the 6th of October. A game you can see here on ESPN. Right-hander Tim Stauffer is into the game, former Minnesota Twin, making his third appearance as a Met, and his contract selected just a couple of weeks ago. 10-year Major League veteran with the Padres and the Twins, facing Brian McCann. First and second, 2 down for the Yankees. The shift is on for McCann. He's 0 for 3, also been hit by a pitch as he hits one the other way for a base hit. A run will score. It's bobbled out in center by Lagares. That will allow Beltran to take an extra base. Should be scored. The 4th error of the night committed by the Mets. And this has been a messy one for the Mets ever since Matt Harvey left the game.
McCann does a good job of beating the shift. Just really getting barreled the ball. Doesn't even swing through this pitch because he sees defensive line. He knows what he needs to do with runners in scoring position to get them in. But really, for Lagares out in center field, he's just trying to come up with it too soon. You see his head, eyes, glove, everything come up before he's got that ball in hand. Recognizing the speed of Ellsbury, but not feeling the ball while doing it.
And it is an RBI single for McCann and an error on Lagares, allowing Beltran to go to third. So 4 errors tonight committed by the Mets. Runners on the corners again. The batter Greg Bird, 0 for 2 and a couple of walks. Now, Crucky, when you're in a pennant race, is it almost better sometimes to lose ugly rather than to lose a heartbreaker? Or is this so ugly that you don't want to have anything to do with this?
Well, you know, losing ugly is one thing, but, you know, 4 errors that's another story. If your pitcher just give it up, they give it up. You know, so it's going to happen. But, you know, when you're playing sloppy baseball like they're playing, throwing the ball around, missing throws, you know, that's something that's harder to take.
4 errors, 6 walks, a hit batter.
Well, and to be honest, the defense is the non-sexy part of what you talk about in baseball. I mean, the Mets have gotten so much attention, of course, early on with their pitching, as of late with their offense, but there has not been a lot of talk with the defense, and I feel like that's probably the weakest link with this team. But again, it's the non-sexy feature of a team.
Bird drills one deep left center field and gone. $11-1 Yankees.
Talk about a player who has come into this role after Mark Teixeira goes down with an injury, steps in his 8th home run, and this is what he does best. He goes with the ball. He's known for seeing the ball deep, very strong, left center field.
Got the ball, didn't lose the ice cream.
Win-win. And if he's a Yankees fan, he's 3 for 3 tonight.
Bird's 8th home run as a Yankee. Well, Jess, you talked about it right off the top of the show. They rely on the home run about as much as any team in baseball.
And I think what impresses me is how they just keep getting players to come into the role that's not there, especially this weekend, not having Alex Rodriguez only in a pinch hitting role. Teixeira's out, and they just keep having the Beltrons and the McCanns and the Greg Bird and even Dustin Ackley tonight.
Bird's got 8 home runs and 112 at bats. He's hitting home runs at a far higher rate in the major leagues than he did in the minor leagues this year.
He's been measured since he got to the big leagues as having the 2nd highest velocity of the ball off the bat in baseball, other than Giancarlo Stanton.
Wow. And you can see right there, not many hitters can let a ball travel that deep and have so much power to opposite field.
And you wonder if he can play somewhere else other than first base. For next year.
Yep.
Alex is going to be the DH. He's signed. Teixeira's signed. He's going to be the first baseman if he's healthy.
(3-2) to Chase Headley, and it's outside, ball 4. This is where, if you're Terry Collins or a Met fan like that guy, and if the rules allowed you to throw in the towel, you might throw in the towel on this one. It's hard to believe that at the end of 5 it was 1-0 Mets.
Yeah, it just was going too crisply.
5 in the 6th, 1 in the 7th, and 5 in the 8th for the Yankees. Ball 1 low to Stephen Drew. To right center, and the inning is over. But another big inning for the Yankees, and their fans who have made their way to Queens are having a good time tonight here at Citi Field. This time it's Greg Bird going to the opposite field for his 8th home run as a Yankee, and they have blown the cover off this one. 11-1, the Yankees lead going to the bottom of the 8th. Back at Citi Field, bottom of the 8th inning, the Yankees in a rout, leading the Mets 11-1. They just tacked on 5 in the top half of the inning. So that's allowed Joe Girardi to get some of his regulars out there. Chris Capuano has come in to work an inning on the mound here. Sabathia 6 strong innings, run below the 7th. Capuano on here in the 8th, and a number of changes in the field as well. Set them for you after the first pitch. Eric Campbell is going to bat for the Mets in the spot of Yoenis Cespedes. Slade Heathcott is into the game in center field for the Yankees. He had a big game-winning home run earlier in the week down in Tampa Bay. Chris Young takes over for Carlos Beltran in right field. Brendan Ryan is at third base. Chase Headley gets the rest of the night off. And Brian McCann is done as well, as John Ryan Murphy is into the game catching for the Yankees. How's the scorecard, Crocky?
Well, it's non-existent.
Did you make it this far?
I lost my eraser.
Campbell was trying to sell Laz Diaz on a hit by pitch there, but no sale.
From up here, it looked like it went through him.
I don't think that's possible.
Well, you never know. This game.
Change up outside, 3-1.
2-1 change up. You win 11-1.
Liner down the right field line, a fair ball. Campbell on his way to second. Well, another important series going on this weekend. The Cardinals and the Cubs. And at the bottom of the 8th inning, Addison Russell flies to right. Rizzo will tag. Hayward the throw, coming home on a bounce. The tag, and the runner is out. But injured on the play, Yadier Molina sprained his thumb. He will be reevaluated tomorrow. Needless to say, that would be a big loss for the Cardinals if Molina were to be out for any period of time. But a big win for St. Louis. There's a base hit through the right side for Daniel Murphy. And Campbell's going to come in to score to make it 11-2. The win for St. Louis keeps them 4 games ahead of Pittsburgh. The Cubs are now 6 back. So St. Louis still looking in pretty good shape to win the division and avoid that wild card game, although there's still a lot of baseball to be played. Pittsburgh at Chicago next weekend for a 3-game series. As it stands now, it would be the Pirates and the Cubs in a wild card game. How does Garrett Cole and Jake Arrieta sound?
Amazing.
Take the under.
I mean, that's definitely a preview of what that wild card would look like.
Yep.
They're 2 aces.
There's Anthony Recker batting for Travis d'Arnaud. Buster, you got more on Molina?
Yeah, our friend Derek Gould, who covers the Cardinals for the St. Louis Post-Dispatch, sent out a note saying that Molina will have an MRI on Monday. He said when he met with reporters after the game, his thumb was wrapped up. He said it hurt when it happened. It hurts right now. We saw during the postseason last year what the loss of Molina could mean to the Cardinals.
Yeah, that is worrisome for St. Louis.
Especially his left thumb. The one that's in his glove, the one he's going to have to catch. You know, you have guys like Lance Lynn who can make the ball run, and you catch one, Michael Wacha. You catch one funny, and that could, that could knock you out of the game right there.
As
1-2.
Good as that pitching staff and bullpen has been. I mean, he's the guy that has been that glue that understands each pitcher and the egos and the familiarity, and each one will sing his praises, and that's the part. I mean, forget the bat, forget even what he can do behind the plate. It's what he does with that staff that's everything to the Cardinals.
And a swing and a miss by Recker, 1 down. It seems like they're always kind of dealing with something. Holiday has missed so much of the season. Just got him back. Just got Matt Adams back. John Jay was out for a long time. Randall Grichuk went on a tear. Then he hurt his elbow. They're pretty good at next man up, but Molina, tough guy to replace.
Yeah, and as much as they like to talk about Tony Cruz and how he's been under Yachty now for a few years, studying and hanging with him and talking to him, it's just not the same. And Cruz could turn into being a great catcher someday, but right now he's not Yachty or Molina. And you're right. You watch the postseason last year when he went down, that whole team it was like deflating.
And even if they win the division, no matter who they play, if it's the Pirates or the Cubs, those are 3 great baseball teams right now. I mean, that's
there's a reason why all 3 are at the top.
They've got the 3 best records in the National League.
Ouch.
There's one. Throw to first is in time to turn the double play that ends the inning. Broken to bat, 1-6-3 double play, end of 8. Mets get a run, but they are still down by plenty. Yankees up 11-2 as we go to the 9th here at Citi Field. Night begins. John Abuchagrass, Jan Anderson handle the post-game wrap-up, plus highlights and analysis from an action-packed Week 2 in the NFL. End your day on a highlight with Sports Center at night, right after our game here on ESPN. To the top of the 9th. Rob Refsnyder is batting for the New York Yankees. He is pinch hitting. It's getting a little breezy here right now at Citi Field. Not to imply that had anything to do with that pitch, but we got wrappers blowing all over the place right now. Temperatures dropped. Refsnyder made his major league debut back in July. Middle infielder, hit .271 at AAA this year. Numerous changes in the field for the Mets, as you would imagine, given the score and the expanded rosters in September.
Refsnyder out of University of Arizona won a national championship with the Wildcats. Talking to him and a lot of the new guys coming up this year. Greg Bird. What Rob said, really who he's looked to has actually been Alex Rodriguez. Talking a lot about just getting help from some of these veterans, understanding even just mechanical things, you know, just relying on both sides. You could argue the same for the Mets. Fordo comes up, and a lot of guys that he can rely on, but it's good to see when a young kid can come up and have people to look to.
Refsnyder strikes out. First out here in the top of the ninth. So the Mets lead over the Nationals will go down to 6 with 13 games left to play. Are the Amazons back? Are they safe? I got 2 friends who are Mets fans who texted me tonight. One says he is not worried at all because of who they're playing coming up in the next 10 games. The Braves, Reds, Phillies before they play Washington. I got another friend who is panicking, absolutely panicking. That 6 is not enough with 13 games left to go. That guy doesn't look too happy. He's not panicking, but he is stewing. He is concerned.
he's tired and ate too many hot dogs. Either one.
Dan, that refrain that hangs with all Mets fans, 7 with 17 left to play.
Yep.
Right?
Yep.
And
yep,
I
that was
get
2007.
Yeah, and I get emails mentioning those words all the time from Mets fans.
This will be 6 with 13 left to play. Towering fly ball to right field, but it'll stay in the yard. Heathcott retired, 2 down. Now, the last time they made the playoffs was 2006, but then met current Yankee Carlos Beltran, caught looking by Adam Wainwright in Game 7 of the National League Championship Series. The notorious, as Buster just mentioned, 7 with 17 to go. The lead they blew in 2007 faded down the stretch in 2008 and have been an afterthought, a team struggling to get back to contention, but they have had a great couple of months. They are still 84 and 65. That will be their record after the loss here tonight. And if you asked anybody, would you rather be the Mets and be 6 up with 13 to go, or be the Nationals and be 6 down with 13 to go? Anybody's taking the Mets, right?
That's what people don't understand. And 162 game season fans, if you polled the Mets fans and said you'll be up 6 games with 17 to go,
13 to go,
13 to go. Would you in spring training? Would you buy into that?
100%.
150% if that's possible.
But now say, okay, you're 8 up with 15 to go, and then 2 days later you're 6 up with 13 to go. That changes their answer a little bit. Fan is short for fanatic, as you know.
Yeah, I know in '93 when we were in first place there and we lost a few games to Montreal, and we were brought back the Philly reminded of 1964. What the Phillies blew they had a big lead and they
6.5 with 12 to go.
Yeah, 6.5 with 12 to go.
You heard all about it, right?
Oh yeah.
Young goes around and the inning is over. We're going to the bottom of the ninth. Monday Night Football comes your way tomorrow night. It'll be the New York Jets and the Indianapolis Colts. Colts trying to bounce back after a tough loss last week. 8:15 Eastern Time tomorrow night on ESPN. Going to the bottom of the ninth, and the new pitcher for the Yankees is right-hander Nick Goody, making his 6th appearance of the season. Made his major league debut back on July the 30th. He is one of 31 different pitchers the Yankees have used this year, and that doesn't count 2 position players who came in to pitch. But a chance for the Yankees to not have to use their key guys tonight, as they blew it open, and they can save their key guys, Betances and Miller, for the series that begins tomorrow in Toronto.
Imagine being Brian McCann and having to catch 31 different guys. No wonder he doesn't have any hair.
Eric Young Jr. is going to bat for the Mets. Mets will host Atlanta beginning tomorrow. .31 pitchers, and that's not the most. I think Atlanta's used 36.
Oh my goodness.
And that's not a record. I think Texas last year, remember all the injuries Texas had in the pitching? They had a lot this year too. But I think Texas used 38 last year. I mean, so picture at the beginning of the season, you break camp with 12.
And you got to find
you use like 20 other whole steps.
You got to use 24 more. Can't find 12 you want to keep. But let's find 24 more after that 12 you don't really want.
Popped up by Young. Drew has moved over to short, battling the wind a little bit now. He makes the catch, 1 down.
Come on, Dan, name them all.
There you go. Here they come. Do you think if you lined up, line up a Yankee and put all 31 of these guys in a row, do you think like one of the Yankee veteran position players could identify all 31?
No. I bet McCann could right now.
You look familiar. You're that 3/4 angle guy, right? So,
Hey, you don't know how embarrassing that is when you haven't seen some teammates for a long time, and someone comes up and introduces themselves. Like, how would I know you? Well, we played together. Whoops.
I got one for you. There was a situation the last decade when a club staffer, a coach, was going through the post-game meal, and he looked up and he saw a guy standing there he hadn't seen since spring training, a player. He said, "Oh, good to see you." And the guy had been there for 2 weeks.
Did you see that graphic we had? 44 players used in this game.
Seems like more.
It just seems like 42 of them were pitchers.
You're going to see me with spikes on here before it's done.
I'd say you have the best chance of anyone in this booth.
Two and two, the count on Lagares. Don't forget, Yankees and Blue Jays Tuesday and Wednesday here on ESPN. Also Diamondbacks and Dodgers later Wednesday. West Coast game Friday night. Astros and Rangers. And a week from tonight, Pirates and Cubs.
Oh boy. You know, Major League Baseball always trying to find ways to speed up games. If you want the average time of a game to decrease, don't count the games in September. Just go April through August.
You mean don't put in the time? Don't count
put
the
a time in it, because this is what you're going to get.
Yeah. Drew charges it short, bounces it over to first, and safe is Lagares. That'll be a base hit.
Gotta love this if you're Terry Collins, watching a guy that was your everyday center fielder, 11-2 game, still busting it down the line. But I think they might have I think he was out.
Wow. A review with a 9-run lead.
Here we go. Got to get their average up.
Wow. I'm not sure we've seen one of these in a game we've done with this kind of a margin at this kind of a time of the game.
Yeah, where does that fall in the unwritten rules?
Yeah. So he's out. I think they're going to win it, though. Crucky, what do you think? Unwritten rules about reviews.
What? Rules about reviews?
He's out.
I'm with you.
Yep, they got him. Let's hope this doesn't take too long. We can send a cab to the offices where they're having these views. And come on, you can do it. You can do it. There you go. Called him out. Lagares is walking back in the dugout.
And they do call him out. John Hirschwick, the crew chief, with the signal there. So 1-6-3, 2 down. So Wilmer Flores will be the batter. A guy who will forever be known as the player who shed some tears on the field when he thought he was going to be traded to Milwaukee. The trade fell through after the Mets didn't like something they saw in Carlos Gomez's physical. So Flores became an overnight hero here in New York. They loved him for wanting to stay with the Mets and showing that emotion that he did. And because they didn't get Gomez, what did they do? They turned around and got Cespedes.
And Flores hit a game-winning home run, what, 2 nights later?
Yep.
Standing ovation.
And Gomez doesn't even. Yeah, he doesn't play that much for Houston.
He's out now. He's injured now. Yeah.
Even when he wasn't injured, he wasn't playing that much.
It's even more incredible than that. They tried to get Gomez. He flunked the physical. They tried to get Jay Bruce from the Reds. The asking price climbed. They tried to get Justin Upton from the Padres. And then they got Cespedes.
Turned out pretty well.
Patience is a virtue.
Fly ball to right field, and that is your ball game. The Yankees pummel the Mets 11-2, despite a very good performance by Matt Harvey through 5. They take 2 out of 3. They move within 2.5 of the Blue Jays, setting up a big series in Toronto beginning tomorrow. The Mets lead over the Nationals is down to 6 with 13 left to play. For Crucky, Jessica, Buster, and the gang, I'm Dan Schulman saying SportsCenter is coming up next.